across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, just to let you know, with the football, England-Ghana, 0-0. Ghana putting up an amazing defence, it would appear. They're all over Bellingham. So we don't know what the score's going to be, but I will keep you updated with it because my team have got the football on next door, so they won't be watching me. So I will keep you completely up to date with what's happening. That you don't need to go anywhere else, but if you do, then obviously it's TalkSport, isn't it? But stay with me for the next 3 hours. Coming up at midnight, we're going to be crossing live to the United States to find out about the football, get a bit more of a background as to what's going on there. So we're going to be doing that at midnight. But also, I will be asking you, because we know today is the 10th anniversary of the Brexit vote. So I want to know, if you voted leave, right, what did it look like to you? What were you expecting from leaving the EU, and how much has that let you down, or are you pleased with the result of your vote? So I'd love to know that. The Times is running a poll saying that if you voted Brexit today, if we were to repeat the referendum today, what would you vote? And currently Remain is at 88%. So I want to know if that would be the case for you as well. If you were to vote today on the Brexit issue, would you vote to leave or remain? Now that we kind of know what we know, or we don't know what we don't know, but we know that we're a bit poorer for it and a lot less stable. So what would you vote if you were voting today? And if you voted leave, what did you think you were being promised? What did you think Brexit would in fact look like, especially, you know, 5 years on from when we finally got out? So give me a call on that. 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at national rate, but we do of course call you back, and text the word talk and your message to 87222. The rest of the show looks like Amy Fisher. She's going to be here to go through the papers. Of course, she was the director of comms for the Tory party, so she'll undoubtedly have a lot to say about the Andy Burnham comms so far and what's going on. So we'll be talking to her at 11 o'clock. We are also going to be talking to Jim Dale, who is a senior meteorologist at the British Weather Services. Guess what about? Were you woken by that storm last night? I couldn't believe the lightning. It was ridiculous. I thought that somebody had parked in the road pointing their lights into my bedroom, because it just kept flashing. And I just thought, what is that? And then the thunder came. But anyway, for me, I got absolutely no sleep. So I want to talk to you about that as well. We're going to be heading off to Scotland to talk about the moral sentencing too, because that happened today. I watched that happening live as the court was televised. I mean, that judge was taking absolutely no prisoner. Well, he did take a prisoner, he took one prisoner, but he was not taking any excuses, I can tell you that. So all of that is to come in the next few hours. But today, as I said, marks exactly 10 years since the historic Brexit referendum, and British politics remains defined by unprecedented volatility since then. Over the last decade, we've witnessed intense institutional friction, rapid-fire prime ministerial successions, and a fundamental reshaping of the UK's democratic fabric. As the next occupant of Downing Street faces a deeply fragmented electorate, looking to the past becomes an act now of political survival. History may offer a blueprint for navigating systemic shocks and restoring stability to a weary nation. And has Brexit fundamentally rewired the mechanics of Westminster, or is this volatility simply a familiar historical cycle playing out. So what's going on? Can we learn from history? Well, joining me to discuss this is Sir Vernon Bognor, who is a CBE and author, historian and professor of government at the Institute of Contemporary British History at King's College, London. And as I was saying to Peter there, he was also David Cameron's politics tutor at Oxford. Very good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me, Sir Vernon.
Thank you for asking me.
Now, we always say, don't we, or history, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. Is there something in the last 7 years, or the last 10 years, that Andy Burnham should be paying particular attention to if he doesn't want to be the 7th Prime Minister to resign?
Well, he inherits a very difficult premiership, I think, and the discussion about Brexit and the discussion about Keir Starmer's qualities or lack of them, I think rather obscures the issue, because the problem we basically face is that we haven't been made richer since the time of the credit crunch in 2008. Incomes have been stagnant. If they'd advanced at the same rate as they had before 2008, we'd all be £100 a year richer. Now, people vote for governments to make them better off, and when they don't, they get annoyed. And Brexit was one response to that annoyance. I think Brexit was more a symptom than a cause. Now, what Andy Burnham has to do is first, I think, put our finances on a stable footing, because they are too heavily indebted. We're borrowing far too much. And that's not easy to do in the Labour Party, because the Labour Party exists to improve social standards, social services and so on. It's very difficult to get Labour MPs to accept the fact that for a moment we may have to cut spending, in particular because of the Iran war, which is making us all poor. Whatever you think of the war, there's no doubt this is one of the effects of that war. So that's a problem he's got to deal with. And I think he's got to do something that politicians haven't done for a long time, which is to be honest with the electorate. The danger for him is that he'll promise all sorts of goodies which can't be delivered. And when they're not delivered, there'll be disillusionment. So I think he doesn't inherit really a very happy ship, if you like.
But this is what's leading to the political malaise that we see in this country, isn't it? It's the fact that we feel like we're being treated like children, we feel like we're being lied to, and we feel like we're being promised candy where there isn't any. And I always say on this programme, I just wish they'd tell the truth. We're adults, we can see what's going on, rather than just disappointing us all the time and over-promising, under-delivering, making us then wonder why we bother to go out and vote in the first place, or listen to a manifesto.
This is absolutely right. I mean, Brexit was the first, in a sense, over-promising. I ought to say I was a Remainer, but even if you were a Brexiteer, no doubt there were advantages from Brexit, but they were vastly exaggerated by its supporters, so there was natural disillusionment. And then we had Liz Truss, who really took the logic of Brexit to, in a way, it's conclusion, because she said, and I think in a way she was right, it can only work if we chart a different course. If we lower taxes, we lower subsidies, we lower regulation, we become what was called Singapore on Thames. Now, that didn't work terribly well, and frankly, I don't think the British public would have put up with what amounted to a 5th term of Thatcherism. And you did have a deep division between the leaders of Brexit, the cheerleaders, if you like, Jacob Rees-Mogg, John Redwood and the rest, who wanted us to be a kind of anthropocentric and a more globalised economy. But the people who voted for Brexit, most of the foot soldiers, particularly in the northeast, wanted the opposite. They wanted more social protection. So the Brexit constituency really divided into two. And after Truss, you then had Rishi Sunak, who couldn't make much headway, perhaps. But then Starmer said he could put things right very quickly. He said he had the secret of economic growth. But economic growth is a wish, it's not a policy. And Wes Streeting said Labour had no growth strategy. That hasn't happened. But Labour has spent as if we've already achieved the growth. And this, I think, is putting us in danger. I think our public finances are unsustainable, and therefore retrenchment is needed, which isn't something a new Prime Minister likes to hear. But you're absolutely right. The politicians haven't been honest about that with the country for many years, of both parties.
Yeah, I mean, I think every politician, actually, across any board you want to look at. Why do they think that? I mean, I'm sure it's not definitely lying, right? I wouldn't go that far. Wishful thinking, perhaps. Why do they constantly and consistently repeat the same mistake, thinking that for some reason there'll be a different outcome the next time they do it? Because the outcome is always the same. It is always us, the public, disappointed, poorer, taxed more heavily, and feeling like what's the point in this democracy?
Perhaps politicians are naturally inclined to over-optimism. It's a pretty hard career. We think it's glamorous, but those in politics don't think it's glamorous. I was talking the other day to a former Conservative junior minister who told me he'd been working 100 hours a week every week, but thought he'd achieved very little. Now, in that position, you're inclined to be over-optimistic, wishful thinking and so on. Otherwise, what's the point of being there? And the great economist John Maynard Keynes once said, politicians are awful. They say the same in private as they do in public. In other words, they believe what they're actually saying. So in a sense, perhaps we're both slightly wrong in saying they're lying, but they indulge in wishful thinking. They won't face realities, which are often very uncomfortable.
Well, Andy Burnham, we know that he is socialist by nature. We know that what he would like to do, he'd like to renationalise water particularly, he'd like to renationalise the railways as well. But he can't, right? He can't afford to do that right now. So if he stands up and says, right, this is my wish list, this is what I hope to do, but I don't think I can do that right now, what's the difference between him and Starmer? What was the point of getting rid of Starmer and bringing in Andy Burnham? I mean, he's got to prove there's a reason for doing that, right?
Well, absolutely. If you're in the Labour Party, you believe that income should be redistributed, and the way to do that is from the proceeds of growth. Now, what do you do if growth is very minimal and people are not going to get richer? That's the problem that people on the left face. It's not quite perhaps that they haven't solved it, they haven't begun to confront it. Looking at it on a more personal level, I do think Andy Burnham has two great advantages over Keir Starmer, three actually. The first is, the most obvious one, that he can actually communicate. Now, Keir Starmer is an odd sort of politician because just the first thing academics do is to teach and write. The first thing politicians have to do is to communicate with the public. Now, Starmer was a very wooden communicator. Now, I think Andy Burnham's second advantage is that having been mayor of Manchester, he's actually run something. And therefore, he knows something about trade-offs, that you can't get everything you want in politics. You have to make some difficult choices. His third advantage is that he does have roots in the north. And that's unusual amongst Labour leaders. 4 of the last 5 Labour leaders lived in Islington. And they're, in North London, not in Islington, but their focus tended to be London-centric. Burnham is different, and he's much more familiar with part of Britain which hasn't really had a very good deal, so it thinks. And that's a great advantage, particularly for a leader of the Labour Party. But he has to confront these difficult problems. Even if you're charismatic and all the rest of it, you can't alter the laws of arithmetic. And they do dictate that you can't spend what you don't have, and there are limits to borrowing.
Except that some in Labour believe there's no limit to taxation and redistributing wealth through taxation. But of course, that would have a contrary effect on growth. But that is usually the answer, isn't it, for a socialist government, just to tax people more?
Well, if you want to tax people more, it's no good just taxing billionaires. That's what Zach Polanski says. But there are not enough of them to make much difference, and they're already paying a lot of tax. You have to take ordinary people like you and me, if you call us ordinary people, people on perhaps not particularly high income. Certainly for an academic, you don't get a high income. And that is going to be very unpopular. Is Burnham going to do that? to get these social improvements. As you say, you're right about it. You cause disincentives, and some people of talent will leave the country. They'll go at a place of lower taxation. If you live in a globalized world, you can't afford to have taxes that are too far out of line with other countries. And there's no evidence that the British people are prepared to pay much more in tax. The taxes have already increased under Keir Starmer's government. He didn't want to increase them, but they have in fact increased largely through maintaining the tax threshold, so that inflation brings more people into the tax brackets. I'm not sure people are really prepared to pay even more in tax.
What about the power of the Prime Minister resting in the cabinet that he or she chooses? In this case, Andy Burnham will be choosing. Does he need to completely shake things up? Because there's been a lot of, it feels like a lot of wannabes on the front bench of Labour recently. There doesn't seem to be a lot of gravitas or a lot of meat, I think, to the cabinet we've got at the moment. Would you agree with that? Does he need to be looking back in history, perhaps, for some more stalwart, older politicians?
I think it helps to have people of some practical experience. To my knowledge, in the Starmer cabinet, there was really no one who had the experience of the world of finance or industry.
Yeah, it was a real problem for him.
I'm not sure there's much to choose from in the Labour Party, but someone who has made an impact is Al Khan, the junior defence minister who resigned, who was, I think, in the SAS.
SBS, yeah.
Yeah, Dan Jarvis, the current defence minister, has been in the army. These are people with practical experience who know what they're talking about. And I think we need more people like that in the government. I mean, too many of the government have worked either their whole lives in politics. I'm afraid that applies to Andy Burnham. He started off more or less as a special advisor and moved up from that. Or they've been in the charity sector, which is obviously very valuable work, but doesn't really train you for the decisions of politics. So it's not easy in the Labour Party to find such people.
But with Keir Starmer, it seems that his late arrival into politics, and many people say we want our politicians to have worked somewhere else before, to have done something else before they become politicians. Well, Keir Starmer had done that, but because of that, he didn't really have the base, did he? He didn't have that the support in Westminster, in the corridors, pals, people that would point him in the right direction, give him the right advice, because I think he got some shocking advice. Either that or he was just not listening to good advice.
Well, advisors advise and prime ministers decide.
Yeah.
I just think Keir Starmer didn't have political instincts or understand much about politics. I mean, he gave the impression of being a lawyer who'd strayed into politics, just as I'm afraid Rishi Sunak gave the impression of being a financier who'd strayed into politics. And he never seemed at ease with being Prime Minister, and he had the unfortunate habit, in my view, of blaming his advisors when things go wrong. That doesn't make for a happy ship.
What about with Andy Burnham? He doesn't just need to be Prime Minister in the UK, but he needs to be a world leader. What can he learn from Starmer or past Prime Ministers about how to achieve that? He says he doesn't want to be abroad very much. He may not have much say in that. There's a lot going on geopolitically. So what does he need to take from history, if you like, in order to be that leader on the world stage?
Well, you're only a leader on the world stage if your country, and in particular your economy, I would say also your defence, is strong. And I'm not sure that Keir Starmer's travelled around the world. He was known, I think, as never hear Keir.
Yes.
I'm not sure these visits did much good. And you can overestimate the importance of personal contacts between leading politicians. I mean, he had personal contacts with Donald Trump. What good did that do? None, as far as I can see.
No.
And the important thing for Andy Burnham is not to swan around the world, but concentrate on how we can improve our economy, how we can increase our growth rate. It's a long-term difficult thing, but that's the central problem we face. And often travelling around the world is, for a politician, a kind of evasion of the problems, because when they travel around the world, they're seen as a statesman, but when they're here, they're only politicians, so they prefer to travel.
Yeah, very true. Andy Burnham, though, he could be Prime Minister by the middle of July. There may be some kind of contest, but I'm not sure there's really any appetite for that within the Labour ranks. So when he becomes Prime Minister, he's not going to have long. Look, we've got rid of six in 10 years. He's going to have to hit the ground running with something to prove that he is dynamic, he's different, and he's going to achieve what Starmer couldn't achieve. Otherwise, we're going to lose patience with him as well. We don't want to wait for anything anymore.
Yes, what I would do in his position is to institute a crash skills programme, if necessary paying for it by cutting other public services, because this is our main problem. And if you look back to the Brexit referendum, which you began the discussion with, the cleavage, if one can use that word, between those who voted for Brexit and those who were against is largely one of skills. All the English conurbations voted for Brexit with the exception of Birmingham, which voted marginally against. But the poorer areas of the country in the northeast and northwest voted solidly against. In other words, remaining appealed mainly to what you might call the exam passing classes, to which you and I belong, who are internationalists, believing in an open economy and so on. But those who've not done well in economics, primarily because they don't yet have the skills needed, they blame the EU for their problems, and they voted against. And Boris Johnson's government, with his Levelling Up programme, which I think was largely an inspiration of Michael Gove's, that, I think, was a very sensible approach. It doesn't seem to have got very far. I think Andy Burnham could do much worse than adopt that, so that we can, as it were, concentrate our resources on the so-called left behind. Skills is the main thing, I think, holding us back as a country, holding our economic growth back. It's a long-term thing to improve it, but the sooner we begin, in my view, the better.
Fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed that. Thank you, Sir Vernon Buchanor, who's a CBE, author, historian and Professor of Government at the Institute of Contemporary British History at King's College, London. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, it's Petrie, and just to let you know that England-Ghana is still 0-0. Just saw Harry Kane take a dive there and grab his ankle, although on the close-up it didn't really look as though it hit his ankle. But anyway, there's frustrations being eked out on the pitch, I can tell you that. Everyone's getting a jolly baity, as they would say if they were posh. So, yeah, it's looking a bit frustrating for the England team there. So I'll bring you up to date with more of that whenever anything happens. I will let you know. Coming up at midnight, we're going to be crossing over to the North America to talk about the game and talk about the British fans again and talk about some other stuff, football related or World Cup related anyway. And I'll be asking you about Brexit. If you voted leave, what was that meant to be as far as you saw it? What did you imagine that Brexit would be like? And has it met your expectations? I mean, it may have done. Is this what you expected? Did you expect something different? And what, if you did, then what did you expect? And if it was rerun today, what would you vote? Would you still vote to leave, or would you vote to remain? Would you still vote to remain, or would you now vote to leave? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Well, talking of football, Talk is celebrating the summer of football in absolute style. How do you fancy getting your hands on a massive £26,000 tax-free? Just imagine that transferring into your account. I'd love that. Whether you want to clear the bills, book a luxury holiday, or just live a little better this summer, it's a life-changing amount of money. If your bank balance could use a serious upgrade, here is everything you need to know.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 8338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now. This is a network promotion, full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. Just a reminder that we're going to be speaking to Jim Dale in about 15 minutes' time to look at the weather, which kept me awake all night. But also at the top of the hour is Amy Fisher. She'll be in to discuss the papers and, of course, the politics of the day. Now, though, Peter Murrell, the former boss of the Scottish National Party, has been sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in prison. He confessed to stealing over £400,000 over several years from the party's funds. Well, Murrell spent the stolen money on the oddest things, but also a lavish lifestyle, buying expensive cars, a luxury motorhome that he never used, fancy pens, hairdryers. He used fake records to hide his crimes. The trial has sparked a massive public debate about politics and corruption in Scotland, leaving many ordinary voters feeling deeply betrayed. So how do voters in Scotland feel now? In this case, has justice been served? I watched it this morning when the judge, I mean, literally, he seemed to be very impatient with Peter Murrell and slammed the gavel down and said, right, take him away. So joining me to discuss this is Alistair Clark, who's a politics and news editor of the Courier in Scotland. Quite the images we saw this morning, didn't we, Alistair?
Yeah, I have to say it was a bizarre moment for me, and I know certainly others and journalists who remember covering Nicola Sturgeon at the the height of her powers. I was thinking back to 2015, walking through Glasgow at a train station when Nicola Sturgeon had just finished a sort of rally that would have been more befitting a rock star, and Peter Murrell stage managed that. It was really odd in the pictures you're showing now to see him in the dock, to see the judge, like you say, sentence him to 5 years, 3 months. It was a moment I won't forget anyway, and I don't think there'll be many people who knew him, who knew Nicola Sturgeon.
Yeah, the judge wasn't taking any lead. The only thing he said was, because you admitted to it and there wasn't a trial, I would have given you 7 years, but you're getting 5 years, 3 months. And of course, I think 3 months is then taken off that for the time he's already spent in custody. So he's got 5 years. He'll probably do, what, 2.5? But how far has Peter Murrell fallen? I mean, he part of the golden couple in Scotland, so the senior ranks of Scottish politics. To that we saw today.
I mean, you know, he was married to the First Minister. He led, you know, the most successful political party in the UK, I would argue, who are certainly the most successful of the last 20 years, 26 years. An incredible fall from grace. And it's impossible to overstate, like I say, just how odd it was to see Peter Murrell, the Peter Murrell that I've met, that many journalists have met in the dock today, and handcuffed and led away and taken down, as the judge said. It was shocking, actually.
And he, I mean, the judge did say, look, we know you're probably never going to work again. You know, this is probably it for you. But he's got his proceeds of crimes hearing coming up, hasn't he? This wasn't the end of it for Peter Murrell. This may have been the beginning of the prison sentence, may have been the beginning of his custodial sentence. But there's more to come for Murrell, isn't there, in terms of this proceedings of crime trial that's being held on, I think, 14th of September.
Yeah, it's a process that people will be familiar with in Scotland. You more often see it with people in organised crime and dealers, where the court will look to seize proceeds of crime. Ultimately, that can be distributed to charities, and it can be distributed to sort of good causes. I suspect the SNP might try to claim some of that money back. I think one of the most bizarre things as well today, and it goes to the heart of this, is that as KC, Mr. Scullion, said that, you know, Peter Murrell has the money to pay this back, and that's one of the most confounding things about all this, is that he was very wealthy.
Yeah,
he's a very wealthy man, and you know, earning, you know, money I certainly can't imagine, and I imagine most people in the UK can't imagine. He was earning £100,000 a year.
Yeah.
You know, a similar amount of money. Very wealthy people have no reason. You know, a lot of the items, and Nicola Sturgeon has made this point in their defence, a lot of the items he was buying he could afford, you know. It wasn't items that, you know, maybe you or I would look at and envy and think, well, what would I do to be able to afford those things?
No, I mean, that's the thing, is that I did think that there would be some amount of mental health defence, although there wasn't. But because some of the things, like the Mickey Mouse ramekins, I can't quite get away from that image. It's like they were odd purchases. It was almost like an addictive shopping habit, you know, rather than any sort of sensible wanting this money and doing something with it, wasn't it? I mean, the motorhome as well, the biggest purchase, 125 grand. He drove it 4 miles and then parked it outside his mother's house and never drove it anywhere after that. So these are extraordinary things for him to have done. Odd.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the motorhome and the Jaguar attract the attention because of quite a lot of money. But you know, I was looking at the pictures that the Crown Office, the Prosecution Service in Scotland have released of what they seized from the home. There's things like kitchen tongs and utensils and, you know, cups and saucers. You know, things of £50. It was things, you know, a parking ticket at a hospital in Fife, where I live.
Yeah, Lalique salt and pepper pots.
Yeah, salt and pepper shakers worth £2,000.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous amounts of money to spend on things. But like I say, that menial stuff as well was stuff that you could certainly afford.
Yeah.
And I think that the judge did say that, you know, we're no closer to understanding why. why this man brought his life to pieces, and frankly, his wife's life. And I was speaking to somebody recently who knew them both well, and they were quite clear that Peter Murrow had two projects in his life. The first project was Scottish independence, and the second project was Nicola Sturgeon, and he has set both back immeasurably.
Where does this leave Scottish politics now? I mean, I know Swinney is keen to get that money back to the SNP, although my understanding is that won't come from the proceeds of crime trial or hearing, that he would have to sue Murrell personally for that money. And I know that they've already, courts have already frozen more than £600,000. So he certainly had that money. As you're saying, he's a wealthy man, and two of them are pensions and half of the house that he owned with Nicola Sturgeon. So he's going to lose his pensions as well.
Yeah, forgive me, I'm not familiar with Proceeds of Crime Act and how that all works around the SNP potentially getting the money back. I imagine that there will be some sort of victim redress element in that, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I think John Swinney, they've instructed council to look at how they get that money back. The reality is that it isn't all going to be they won't be able to get it all back. A lot of the items have been seized and able to be resold. Ultimately, the camper van belongs to the SNP.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's only driven 4 miles. I can picture the journey in my head from a local business park to his mother's house. I'm not quite sure it is 4 miles actually. Things like that, that still technically will belong to the SNP, we could potentially look to resell and look to recoup money from Peter Murrow. There's also the question of an outstanding loan, which Peter Murrow made to the SNP of £100,000. I think he's still technically due, I think it's about £60,000 from the SNP on that loan. I think the police certainly seem to believe that loan was, which was always a bit murky at the time, nobody quite understood it. The sort of explanation at the time was that it was to help with cash flow after the Scottish Parliament election. I think the police now believe that was sort of a money laundering exercise. He sort of loaned the money back that he had stolen from the SNP in order to sort of legitimise it when it came back to him. And I think that explains that loan finally. So yeah, whether they pay that loan back or not, I suppose technically it's the books as a loan. I guess that's £60,000 at least.
And he got away with it for so long. And in fact, as the judge said this morning, he increased the purchasing. He increased the embezzlement of this money as time went on. He obviously felt a bit more confident about it. But it wasn't very sophisticated, something the judge also said. He said, look, you put these documents through. They were really not very sophisticated. And yet he got away with it time and time again, which talks about a system that allowed him to do that. What is the SNP planning to do now to make sure that these monies that don't really belong, they belong to the people, aren't pilfered by somebody else?
Yeah, so speaking to John Swinney and people close to him, I think he has certainly introduced a pretty stringent financial check and balance system in the party now that I imagine is stronger than most other parties. Essentially, the SNP can spend a penny without, I think, at least 3 people signing up on it. And that certainly wasn't the case before. Peter Murrow essentially had access to charge cards, credit cards, in which you could spend tens of thousands of pounds without anyone, apparently raising an eyebrow. I think now there is much, much more strict controls in place inside the SNP on who can spend money and what they can spend it on. I was listening to one of the police interviews that's been released with Peter Murrow, in which he gave a no comment interview, but the questions in themselves were quite revealing. Charge after charge after charge on the credit card was Amazon, and the police officer, I think, quite aptly made the point in the interview that was quite easy to miscode on the SNP's finance system, because Amazon sells everything. So you could put it as £25 on Amazon and tell the party it was for something for the party, and actually it was a pen or it was a utensil set or whatever.
But he spent £43,000 on Amazon. I mean, yeah, I don't know how the party just went, we needed a lot of pens then, or we needed, and why were they sent to his home address and to his mother's address? I mean, it's all very odd.
That's one of the big unresolved questions, is how he got away with this.
Yeah. It's so unsophisticated, so stupid, really, so basic.
Yeah, and you know, I think we've all worked in businesses where there's maybe been expenses or you know, maybe a company credit card, and I think we all know how strict those really,
Yeah. So, I mean, Nicola Sturgeon, we know she's been cleared of any wrongdoing. There was a gold-plated investigation into her, whether she had any knowledge of this, whether I mean, how she didn't, I don't know, because I would have questioned a new Jag turning up and loads of Amazon stuff arriving. But she has been found completely, she's been exonerated of anything to do with this particular crime. And yet her reputation by default has been damaged too, hasn't it? Can you see her doing well in Scotland from now on, or is she tainted by this?
Just on a point of fact, Nicola Sturgeon hasn't been exonerated. She has not been prosecuted.
Yeah, fair enough. But she was investigated and found to have had nothing to do with it.
She wasn't prosecuted. In terms of Nicola Sturgeon, I think her reputation is in tatters now. You know, I think the people I speak to across the country, you know, say that, you know, they maybe believe that she didn't know, but the issue they've got is she should have known. And, you know, this wasn't just a husband and wife for a lack of curiosity on her part, on, you know, with tens Amazon deliveries that must have been arriving every day. And this was the party leader and the chief executive, who was her husband. It shows an astonishing lack of curiosity. And it wasn't as if people weren't raising some questions. You know, way back in 2021, there was questions, and Nicola Sturgeon told a meeting of the party's ruling executive that they should be careful what questions they ask, and that the accounts were totally fine. So it wasn't like people weren't raising questions. And I think, you know, Nicola Sturgeon has been very keen to make this about, you know, the husband and wife dynamic, but ultimately this was the party leader and the chief executive, his effective boss. And not to have a little bit more curiosity as to how the party's finances will be managed is astonishing. I mean, I think that I don't think Nicola Sturgeon had any plans, but I don't think a return to public life, certainly in Scotland, is on the cards anytime soon. I think
so she won't succeed. She won't be forgiven in Scotland for a long time.
No, and in truth, I think in privately she won't be forgiven by a party.
Well, I know she's living in London at the moment, isn't she?
Yes, I believe so. I think she is due to appear in the Sky News documentary.
Yeah, she said that she couldn't be in Scotland. She was too recognised and was living for the crimes of her husband, or soon-to-be ex-husband.
That's certainly her.
It's an astonishing story. It really is. Thank you very much indeed for joining me this evening, Alistair Clark there, who's politics and news editor of the Courier in Scotland. Right, coming up, we're going to talk about that stupid weather this morning or last night. Awful.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening to you. It's Petrie here, just about here with you, because I got absolutely no sleep. I mean, literally none, because of the lightning, the thunder, and a puppy who never experienced either before and was very upset about it. So I literally got no sleep at all, and I tried to get sleep this afternoon. I think I got about maybe a dodgy hour. So I'm on vapours tonight. But the red extreme heat warning takes effect from tomorrow morning. So you thought today was bad. Until Thursday evening across parts of England and Wales as the UK faces its hottest June day on record. Temperatures are set to exceed 35 Celsius, that's 95 Fahrenheit for us oldies, in the southeast. This extreme weather has already forced at least 312 schools to close. Before the searing heat last night, volatile storms here unleashed nearly 30,000 lightning flashes across southern England, triggering flash floods, travel chaos and 2 house fires. This ferocious heat wave has been felt across the whole of Europe with tragic results. In France, 2 small children have been found dead in their family car and 40 people have drowned since last week. And in Spain, where parts of the country have seen temperatures reaching 44 degrees, its state weather service said that June heat waves are becoming increasingly common. 10 have been recorded in the last 25 years, whereas only 2 were recorded in the 25 years before that. Well, here to discuss all of this with me now is Jim Dale, Senior Meteorologist at the British Weather Services and co-author of Surviving Extreme Weather. Perhaps I should have had your book this morning when I was trying to sleep, Jim.
It might have helped. Good evening to you.
I've never seen anything like it. Good evening. I mean, I honestly thought that somebody had parked their car and were flashing their lights into my bedroom. They were so bright. Genuinely.
Do you know what? Well, that particular thunder cell wasn't even forecast. It came completely out of the blue. I was tracking it from Cornwall, where it started in Cornwall, but I really thought, well, this wasn't on the charts that we look at, the models, if you like, and caught us all by surprise. And the ferocity of it. Even more so. One of those things, and essentially went through the M4, went down the M4, arrived at your house, did its stuff.
Yeah, I'm West London
away.
As well. I'm right off the M4, so I know.
Well, okay, give or take.
Yeah, I'm literally
Give or take.
Shepherd's Bush way. But it was extraordinary. I mean, nearly 30,000 lightnings. What's the average, roughly?
I don't know what it is, but that was well beyond the average. And the thing is, and I say this openly to you, that when we get this kind of these heat domes that we got at this moment in time, it makes lightning, it makes thunderstorms that much more intense. So, that's essentially what happened. I mean, we weren't even in the teeth of the heat, as you've just mentioned. That comes during tomorrow. But it was hot enough. Essentially, it was cool air to the north that was meeting the warm air, the hot air that had come up from France and Spain and these sort of places. And the two meet, and essentially they don't like each other. And when they meet, they mix, and you end up with what you saw and what many people saw. And by the way, it's not all over as far as thunderstorms are concerned, because when this all breaks down, and we've not even got, as I say, we yet to get to the big heat, when that breaks down during the course of Friday particularly, it could be an instant replay. It won't be in the same places, but the same kind of chaotic thunderstorm activity could well be affecting other places further afield than what we saw yesterday. So plenty to come, including that heat. And by the way, France saw its hottest day ever yesterday. When I say hottest day, what that means is night and day combined, 30 stations added together. The combined total, the mean total was 29. I think it was 29.5, give or take. How impressive is that?
We've seen these extreme heat waves. I'm just sort of groping around in my memory. Wasn't Italy particularly bad a couple of years ago? And we've seen these European heat waves where there was loss of life. I mean, considerable loss of life because of the heat. Is this now our norm, if you like? Is this what we should be looking at in the UK as well as being right? Well, this is just summer now.
I'll tell you a little story. About 30 years ago, I got myself on the front pages of a national newspaper talking about how we would be turning into, this is the UK, the southern part of the UK particularly, into a Mediterranean type climate because of climate change. This is the direction of travel. You're dead right in pointing out the various heat waves, including our own heat waves that have occurred. And we had one in May. We did. Smashed the old record. But, 2022, July 40.3. The last 10 years globally have been the warmest 10 years. You could say hottest if you want to. But there's no getting away from this. This is when I say the new normal, when you feel these temperatures in the next 2 days, places such as Bangkok, Phuket, Thailand area, these sort of places, they're actually going to be cooler than what we're going to see in the UK. It used to be a time where we perhaps got on a plane out of cool and rainy Britain and headed for these places, and that was the wow factor when you got there. It's now I say it's the other way around. To be competing with a tropical zone is phenomenal and scary at the same time.
And it's a really muggy, it's not a dry heat, is it? We're getting this sort of muggy, cloudy heat, which is somehow worse.
It's worse because it adds to the heat factor, the heat index that we call it. So if you get, for example, if we see a 38-degree F temperature, or even a 40-degree C temperature, 40 degrees C, that isn't 40 degrees C in terms of how you feel it. With the humidity that you're talking about, that could easily be 50 degrees. And that's the problem. It makes things worse. It's not dry like you get in the Middle East or North Africa. It's this very humid heat that you often get in tropical areas. And then, by the way, you get the tropical downpours to follow. They go hand in hand, do they not?
I mean, this is why I decided to plant a tropical garden. I'm not even joking.
Oh.
I've got tropical plants in my garden. There's banana trees and things like that. And they're doing. I planted a fig tree a couple of weeks ago. It's already got figs on it. It was a stick and a couple of leaves, but it's definitely those are the plants that I've gone for, and they seem to be thriving.
Well done for being perceptive. Well done for looking at that and saying this is where we've got to go. Because of course there are farmers now, farmers who may have changed their plants, whatever their crops, whatever they're putting out there. We are growing wine more and more in the south of England, for example. So that's a Mediterranean climate for you. Whether we get to the actual tropical one, we'll see. But the point is that this is a one-way street. This was warned about, not just by myself, but by better people than me, David Attenborough and others, who said this was on the way because of fossil fuel emissions. And this is what it's all about. There's no use now people turning up on this station or other stations saying, oh, it's no rubbish, just weather. That's garbage, to be honest with you. That's what the garbage is. Richard Tice often goes on about, it's garbage, that's climate change. No, I'm afraid he's lying. And he's lying for his own sake. And I will say it, and I'll say it loudly. Do you know why I would say that, Petrie? Because it's not necessarily me and you or people of our age, etc., who would necessarily suffer going forward. It's going to be the kids and the children, grandchildren of today who are going to grow up in a hothouse world that may well be, if we carry on like this, quite unlivable going forward. That's why I say it.
Are we going to have to then, as a country, as a nation, start really thinking about changing crops, really thinking about what we grow, really thinking about water supply, building more reservoirs, all of those things that we've kind of neglected to do? We've just, chuck along potatoes, turnips, and on we go. But and start thinking about air conditioning in houses. And although, of course, what's his name wants to not have air conditioning in houses.
Air conditioning is a Marmite thing, isn't it? Simply because, yes, it answers the question while you're there, it cools you down, but it puts a lot more, it takes a lot of energy, and that's the problem. The use of the energy, if it's fossil fuel use, it's not going to be any good to the environment.
Yeah, Miliband wants it banned. He wants it banned anyway, doesn't he? He says no aircon in houses. But how do we live without it?
Well, you're right, we're behind the ballpark. We've got to start changing things bit by bit. I'll just give you a very simple one, and that is houses that are built, particularly in the south of England, and south of Wales should be built not with red brick. We have to paint them. We have to make sure that we're looking like the houses in southern Spain and southern France. They're not white for any bad reason. They're white so they reflect the heat, and the difference is huge in terms of when you touch a white surface as opposed to a black surface in full sun. You'll feel the difference. It's huge, and that's just one little aspect. We've got to get cooling stations. We've got to really change the way that we think, the way that we act, the crops that we grow. All of that type of thing is right online now in terms of the government and others, ourselves, regional councils, etc. Not dismissing climate change, but actually working for it, making sure that we're there and able to cope with not just the heat, but the flash floods. And beyond all of this, I'll say beyond, right at the front of all of this is a thing called education. If people were a little bit more educated in terms of what to do, what it's about, what to do, how to do it, we would see less deaths, we'd see less problems, we'd be able to cope much better with what is aimed at us, because what is aimed at us is going to get more. This won't be the end of the heat waves 2026. We haven't even reached July and August yet. These are the prime summer months. September, the new summer month in my book.
Yeah,
how that actually goes. Yeah, so let's educate ourselves a little bit. We're doing things in British Weather Services that we've got a course actually in terms of surviving extreme weather that's actually on the website. But beyond that, we've got other plans. I won't give you them now, but there's other things that we've got that we're thinking ahead in terms of what do people need to educate themselves with? How can we do that? And you'll see we'll roll these things out. A lot of it media type stuff. In other words, people can use it and play it, whatever it happens to be. That they'll be able to get that information and be able to say, okay, this is what I do. This is how I'm going to cool myself down.
You're right.
And other.
We all need to know how to cope with this stuff. Got to take a break. Back in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
there, and a good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you, and you may have just heard of the football 0-0. That was it. It's ended. The game is over, and it's 0-0. I don't know what that means for England. Probably not very much. Yeah, Ghana put up an incredible defence. Even I could see that, and I don't know anything about football. That is the score. So 0-0 on England's second game. And I think Ghana play Brazil next, is it? Do Ghana play Brazil? No? Who does? Oh, Ghana, that's it, Croatia. So they play Croatia. Ghana plays Croatia and England play Panama. So, anyway, that's the football. Coming up at midnight, we are going to be crossing over to America to have a chat to one of our reporters there about the game and about the fans and about all the other stories that surround the World Cup. And we're also going to be heading to talk about the reflecting pool. I am just obsessed by, I have to be honest with you. I am obsessed by Washington DC's non-reflecting pool. So going to be heading over to chat about that as well. But I will be asking you a question. And the question is to do with Brexit, because it's 10 years since the Brexit vote. And I want to know, what were you expecting? If you voted to leave, what did you want Brexit to look? What did you believe Brexit was going to look like? What did you imagine you were voting for? Are you pleased with it? Are you satisfied that you got what you wanted? That it's all been fantastic? And if the vote were to be held again today, which way would you vote? Now that we've got a bit more information, we can see what has happened and what hasn't happened. Would you still vote the same way as you did? For example, if you voted to remain, have you changed your mind? Would you now vote to leave? And vice versa. So do give me a call. It's a decade now. What did you... I'm always interested in this because we were always told about what Brexit looked like, but nobody really knew what Brexit was going to look like. There were 5 or 6 different versions floating around at the time, I seem to remember. So I wonder which one you thought you were going to get. And did you get it? 0344 499 1000. Calls charged at the national rate, but we call you back. And text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Well, with me to discuss this and a couple of the papers. The papers are very late again today because they want to put the score of the football game on the front page. So that's what we're waiting for, I believe. But we have Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party, in the studio. It's been quite a news week, hasn't it, Amy?
It has. I'd just like to say how delighted I am to be here because it's about 15 degrees cooler than it is in my flat. So, well done, talkTV air conditioning.
Yeah. Well, it's working for a change.
No, I know, it's delightful.
It is delightful, actually. I have to be honest with you. It's very, very nice in here. You just set up a camp bed. They won't notice you in the morning.
You don't even tempt me in quite a weird and creepy way that I might still sort of be here in 12 hours' time.
Let's just first of all address Brexit. 10 years, right, we're looking at. And look, it can be argued that there were a lot of things that happened after that vote that stymied what some people thought that they might get. You know, we had COVID, the war in Ukraine, you know, all of these things that have happened, which have not been the ideal circumstances for what people may have assumed that Brexit would have been. What did you imagine that Brexit would be?
So not looking to dodge the question, which I will sort of address directly, but I was a sort of reluctant Remainer, in the sense that sort of quite a lot of me, sort of personally and politically, was actually very attracted to Brexit and sort of some of the big themes behind it. You know, the sort of independence and, you know, the freedom to sort of strike out boldly in a direction that we, you know, as Britons perceived we wanted our country to be going, without sort of being tethered or anchored perhaps in a sort of unhelpful way to the continent. But then when it came down to it, you know, the morning of my vote, and I literally needed to go and put a, you know, cross next to something, I just couldn't I didn't have enough of a grasp on actually how any of it was going to work.
Yeah.
So as I say, I've been conflicted throughout the whole campaign. Kind of instinctively, I was in a sort of Brexity type space, but because I just couldn't conceive of how any of it was going to kind of get done, that in the end, I guess, you know, head over heart, or whichever way you want to put it. I mean, and then very much what had been, you know, the driving sentiment behind me voting the way I did 10 years ago was when the last government department that I worked in was actually the Northern Ireland office, which, you know, typically is one of the, you know, much smaller, less prominent government departments. You know, you don't really hear a lot about the NIO, certainly not since obviously Troubles and all of the sort of security situation is nothing like it was 25 years ago. And so a lot of, you know, focus on government departments is the big ones, you know, welfare, health, the rest of it. But suddenly, with Brexit, you've got the teeny tiny NOI literally right at the heart of the sort of biggest Gordonian knot of intractability, complex issues to sort out, because it was literally the Northern Ireland issue, and not having, you know, a hard border on the island of Ireland. I mean, quite literally what has been the source of conflict there for, you know, some hundreds of years. And it became all about, you know, is there a hard border? Is the border in the sea?
Should there be a bridge?
Should there be a bridge? And so then when it was, you know, I was really immersed in trying to understand how any of these complexities of literally like goods, you know, sausages, how we moving or exporting sausages around, it literally all came back to this borders issue. And I just turned to very senior director general in the NIO. I mean, he was Mr. NIO. He'd been there for years. There was nothing he did not know about Northern Ireland. I just sort of said to him, am I being really stupid? But, like, tell me how this is going to work. And he sort of sighed and he went, I could go through it all again with you, Amy, but it's not you being stupid. Like, it just doesn't work. So then I sort of said, but somebody at number 10, like, but you've gone through all of this with number 10. How did they think it was going to work? And he was just like, no, they always knew it wasn't going to either.
Oh, God.
And he just sort of admitted it with this sort of very matter-of-fact, just matter-of-fact...
exhausted by it all.
Exactly. And so you would just endlessly go around in circles with, as I say, there's sort of just intractability of it, whichever way you try to cut it. And so, you know, for me, I'd voted the way I had done. And then when I ended up in the Northern Ireland office, sort of 5 years after the vote itself, I was like, oh, no, this... I was kind of right with my instinct of just
well,
not
it's still
really...
a problem.
Oh, no, it completely is. So as I say, it was, you know, I was in the NIO more up until the end of the sort of Conservative... I mean, you know, none of the problems have really gone away. I mean, we actually... And it's not just the kind of trade issues is why... there are sort of implications around this not dividing island border, not hard border, that have all sorts of downstream ongoing consequences for kind of migration issues.
Yeah, we saw that.
Frankly, criminality. I'm not talking about sort of... for want of a better way of putting it, kind of Northern Ireland criminality. I'm not talking about, you know, the IRA or the, you know, PIRA or the real IRA. I'm talking about, you know, organised crime, gangs, smuggling, money laundering, people trafficking, modern slavery. So, no, 10 years on, there is just an awful lot that just isn't working and is leaving us quite exposed. And I say that not in a kind of pointy, oh, look, Brexiteers, it hasn't worked. Because, as I say, I kind of broadly and instinctively was kind of on the side of Brexit. I'm just saying, goodness gracious me, the actual practicalities of trying to get any of this to work is still there and as complex and causing, you know, whichever government of the day, real problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, just looking at the, you know, talking about the changes of prime ministers, and, you know, in 10 years, now 7, Is that a coincidence? The instability of the politics of this country, perhaps the non-delivery or the failed delivery of what people imagined Brexit would be, the boats, the increased exponentially since Brexit, and our ability to return them to France, which we had, no longer exists because we left the EU. So it just feels like it's more than a coincidence that these issues have been compounded by something either wasn't followed through properly or was a bad idea to begin with. And I don't know which one it is, but it certainly doesn't appear to have worked in the way that a lot of people imagined that it would. We haven't got those trade deals. I mean, do you remember Liz Truss talking about cheese or sausages?
Yeah, I know, I think we just need to remember we can discount an awful lot of what Liz Truss has said at any point. So I'm just.
But she was like, "Oh, we've just sold some
caveat
sausages."
That one out there. But look, I think the change of personnel at the top, for want of a better way of putting it, has had a kind of enormous impact. And then you sort of get into the causation, correlation type argument. But you know, whichever way you want to cut it, I don't think it's anything less than obvious that these two things have been happening in tandem. And if one hasn't led to the other, then one definitely has an effect, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just even going back, obviously, to, you know, David Cameron. I mean, certainly even, I was in CCHQ at the time, and I think even now there are certainly not insignificant elements of the Conservative Party that just still feel hurt by the way he just sort of left in quite a sort of.
Yeah, right. Right, I'm off then.
Yes, in quite a sort of almost lackadaisically. I mean, the thing about DC was, I mean, he was always so fantastically sort of relaxed. I mean, that was his general kind of style as PM, and just, you know, him personally. But, you know, it was the way sort of, oh right, the vote's gone this way, and DC sort of turns up in one of his fantastically, you know, well-cut navy suits and says, yeah, I'm off now.
Yeah.
And everyone just kind of went, what?
Yeah.
And so, as I say, you know, there are still, you know, sections of the, you know, sort of my friend, we still sort of discuss it. That, you know, the party never really, well, obviously never really quite got over the way he just sort of left so quickly, because that was what kick-started this whole seven-year merry-go-round. I mean, you know, there have been several commentators saying, well, since obviously Starmer resigned, you know, we always used to frankly take the mickey out of Italy for not seeming to be able to keep hold of any of their their premiers, and now they look positively, you know, how they were in the 90s was positively stable.
Was it 5 in 4 years or something?
Yes.
I mean, it's less than a year.
It's just getting a bit embarrassing. It's that sort of Oscar Wilde quote of, you know, lose one parent is, you know, misfortune, to lose two starts to look really quite bad.
Yeah.
You know, and there is so quite often, and also I'm not one of these naysayers about the civil service, because actually I think they do a pretty admirable job. I mean, look, like any big organisation, you will have some absolutely fantastic ones and you will have some really cruddy ones, but that's not the nature of the civil service. That's the nature of any large organisation. But the problem is, when you are having this just absolute churn, I think it's kind of less that the civil servants are taking the opportunity to just kind of kick back and, you know, just not do anything because they don't really fancy it. The problem is they just don't know what they're meant to be doing.
Yeah.
And in some of those really big departments, you know, like the Home Office where I've worked, you know, like, you know, benefits from, I mean, defence, talk about one of the hot topics quite literally of the week. Like, you do need really clear and determined ministerial ambition and priority setting right from the top. Otherwise, the nature of, you know, the gears is that they'll just sort of grind, as I say, not because the civil servants are sort of lazy or trying to kind of frustrate anything or just can't be bothered. It's just they just don't know what they're meant to be doing, and they don't have sign-off to do it, and unless they have direction, you know, it's a bit like the driver's car. I mean, they will just sort of grind to a stop, and then that's why when this country is so exposed on so many things, you know, our economic future, you know, defence and how on earth we're going to sort of secure ourselves moving forward with none of the sort of geopolitical threats. Any of the big areas, when you've got these big departments kind of lacking leadership because of just this constant sort of churn, it leaves the country really, really exposed. So, it's not even the sort of political high drama, which, let's be honest, we all sort of slightly enjoyed yesterday. I don't mean anything personal about Keir Starmer. I just mean, like, any sort of political junkies. When you get these big piece events, you're sort of glued and can't stop talking about it. But, leaving the sort of politics aside and whatever kind of internal machinations or otherwise the Labour Party will now have with their leadership. As I say over here, you've actually got the vast chunk of the people who outrun the country totally stymied by not actually having anyone properly in charge.
Having no direction and nothing, nowhere to go.
So that's what I mean. That's a really serious point. Aside from the sort of political melodrama, there is actually a far wider, far more real and dangerous impact on the country.
Yeah, and I think we're aware of that as well. There is a feeling that when the politics happens, that the country isn't being run, and we all feel that frustration. That there's an awful lot of activity around Westminster, but it doesn't seem to leach out into the real world.
No, and also, frankly, again, I'm not taking a cheap shot, but sort of, well, quite obviously at the moment, Rachel Reid is going to be, at least in some part, consumed less by what she's doing to promote the economic growth of the country and just kind of worried about her own career. That's just a sort of human thing, right? The very woman who's meant to be laser-like focused on promoting, Britain and its economic interests. She's just not 100% going to be into her job at the moment.
Also,
and that's not me being particularly nasty about her. That's just me saying, if you're about to get toppled from one of the most senior political jobs in the country that you've sort of worked your whole adult life to get, that's going to have an effect on you.
Absolutely, and she'll be replaced by Wes Streeting, I think.
Well, as long as it's not Ed Miliband, I think.
Well, we'll come to that from the paper in just a moment. Right, so give me a call. What did you vote for? Did you vote for Brexit? And did you get what you asked for? And if you didn't, what were you expecting? 0344 499 1000. And you can message me as well. Put the word talk and your message to 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie, and with me is the fabulous Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The I-Paper, at the top left there, the price Ed Miliband may pay to become Burnham's Chancellor. The markets will go into freefall if he becomes Chancellor. But he's already approved Jackdaw, the gas field in the North Sea. So
I just can't quite believe he would do that.
I can't either.
I can't.
Well, actually, I can, because they're all hypocrites. They're all in it for themselves. That's my view. And Ed Miliband would have seen a chance to become Chancellor and said, well, if I have to go against every principle that I've ever had...
But you see, the bit that I'm not sure is quite sitting with me is I'm not sure he does want to be Chancellor, because at the moment, I mean, he obviously wants to... There's a strong argument for he obviously wants to stay in cabinet and stay in the job that he's currently got, because he gets to go. You know, he's got this real sort of zealotry sense of, you know, mission about him and how he's going to sort of be the saviour of the world, and, you know, climate change and net zero and all that, and all of these things that we know he's sort of hoisted his petard to. Why would he want to give that? And you know, sometimes when people do get this kind of sort of messianic sort of, you know, mission sense of themselves, I mean, it's actually very powerful. Why would he want to give any of that up to go and be the Chancellor when, you know, he has been around the block enough times to know that that's not a pleasant job?
No, but at the moment he has to argue with the Chancellor about money for net zero.
For all of his prep, yes.
And he wouldn't have to if he was Chancellor.
But this feels like the gas field feels like too big a payoff for him. I mean, particularly so.
No, I think they're probably all you know, all their principles of, you know.
Oh, this is not a particularly principled argument I'm making for Ed Miliband. It's more, as I say, he's so imbued with this kind of, you know, zeal on the climate change stuff. Plus, you know, he's had the big jobs before and they didn't exactly end well.
No, but that doesn't stop his ego, does it?
He'd be giving up quite... But his ego loves what he's doing at the moment. I think that's kind of his ego's being fed. He genuinely believes that, you know, he's the right one about...
He gets a lovely Grace and Favour mansion, though, doesn't he?
Yes, that's the accommodation would be not bad.
Yeah, and Admiralty Arch.
But again, I think, you know, Andy Burnham, that'd be such a bold choice for him to make.
I think it would be a disaster.
The markets would go completely bananas.
We'd all be taxed.
We'd all be taxed. I mean, it's a genuinely terrifying...
It is a genuinely terrifying
Soviet-style vision of a Miliband Chancellor future. It's genuinely...
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I'm not that bothered by Andy Burnham. He's got a good reputation for being, like, personally a nice chap. But, like, the thought of Ed Miliband being anywhere near the coffers of HMT, like, genuinely makes me feel, like, quite ill.
Yeah, he's ready to approve Jackdaw. So he's going to go against his principles, or his alleged principles, in order to get the big job.
I mean,
if he's even prepared to do that, he's a scumbag.
Well, it doesn't say a great... I just think, as I say, I think there's just a few too many factors in it that I'm not that worried by this story quite yet. I think it's all I
think he's given it to Wes Streeting. I really do, because
hopefully,
I think Wes Streeting for Andy Burnham, he's got to now pull both sides of the Labour Party together. He's seen to be left of it. Wes Streeting is seen to be right-ish. So if he wants to pull the sides together, he's going to have to pepper his cabinet.
He's got to find a space for Wes Streeting.
But he left the health. So he left his health. So that's one of the big jobs, right? That's a big boy job. So he's not going to accept a lesser job than either Defence Secretary, which I think will probably go to somebody who's actually got military expertise. But I think that I think he's Chancellor. Because he was the #1 challenger, wasn't he?
And it was, and he
immediately
withdrew with such alacrity.
Yeah.
They'd already talked. There was no like pressure from the media or anything like that. It was boom, seamless, straight
within
out.
an hour.
I am backing Andy Burnham.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I would. In comparison with these, as I say, real anxieties I have about. I keep having these kind of visions of, like, you know, Ed Miliband coming back, and then obviously Angela Rayner couldn't... I was going to say she's on manoeuvres. She's not on manoeuvres. She's, like, literally rolling her metaphorical tanks as far as she thinks she's able up number 10, right?
Yeah.
She's been saying a lot of stuff. She was out sort of think tank
she's planning a big job
Monday,
with them.
You know, where she was talking about welfare and how proud she is that they, you know, the two-child cap was removed, and, you know, people on welfare shouldn't be at all embarrassed because actually they're just families who need... I mean, she was really... So just, the idea of a few of these left lefty types coming back, and if it's too saturated without any of the more sensible types, the Wes Street things.
And in big jobs.
And
he did a reasonable job with the NHS.
Yes, he did. Waiting lists have come down. I mean, that's sort of
a bit of fudging of the numbers,
I was about to say that's sort of how you want to cut the figures, but I don't think he did a bad job. I think he's personally quite competent.
He's a good communicator, which is what this government needs now.
He's got a personal ambition, which is obviously driving him. So no, I could live with a streeting chancellor, and yeah, we can leave this story about Ed Miliband to one side because it's sort of giving me the chills.
Yeah, I think it would definitely give the markets the chills. That's absolutely for certain. The other story on the front page, in fact, it's on every front page before the football was announced, is the weather. Britain's set to break 50-year heat record. Met Office forecast 39 Celsius this week, smashing UK's June record from 1976. Hundreds of schools to close to cope. High humidity adds to... That's the issue with the weather.
It makes it feel like there's the feelability factor, as they call it, so it actually feels even 4 or 5 degrees hotter than the kind of baseline temperature. So that is quite literally, no joke, like the killer about it.
It really is. It is dire. And 29,000 lightning strikes overnight. Were you woken by this?
Yes, I was. Well, I quite like storms, though.
I do. I love storms.
It was so spectacular. But then I didn't have a little puppy that was not
barking
happy
and reactive.
about life.
Bless him. He was not happy. But yeah, I mean, 29,000. I wonder who counted them. They somebody sit there and go 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, I've lost count.
Things.
I've lost count. Go back. Certainly a heck of a lot, and there were floods as well, and a couple of houses were set on fire by the lightning.
There's one sort of infrastructure company I wouldn't want to be working for this week. It's the trains, right? Because some stations were closed with sort of the results of sort of flash floods from last night, and then obviously for any of the sort of southern, we've had the crash last week, and then we've got sort of southern railways saying basically for Wednesday and Thursday, like, please don't travel.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, just don't go anywhere, because actually, sort of related to the crash, this extreme heat can affect the points. Basically, the metal melts.
Yeah.
So then the points bits, the train might not kind of go.
And the metal expands,
and then the trains and then it can get warped. And no, so it's all actually pretty serious. I'm kind of in the camp of, I guess, a bit of sun delightful, as long as I don't have to do anything more taxing than sort of sit around with, Aperol spritz. But when it sort of comes to sort of doing anything or having to travel anywhere or try and to work, I mean, this country just isn't sort of quite set up for it. I mean, this is just too hot, right? I mean, 39 degrees.
We're just not used to it.
It's incredibly warm.
We are going to have to get used to it. But France records its hottest day since records began, hitting 44.3 Celsius in Pissos, similar to the interior of the Sahara Desert.
Crazy. And they had to shut one of their nuclear power stations. Did you see this?
No.
Well, because the water that was cooling it was basically too hot, and then he suddenly went, nuclear reactor, we should shut it down. Because it sort of got it up to like 46 degrees or something, and then everyone got a bit worried, as you sort of would do if you were in charge of that particular reactor. So look, again, the kind of, huge implication, for energy security there. If we're, getting to a stage where nuclear, which is largely relied on, well, it's tautology, but it's sort of seen to be one of the more reliable power sources, actually, if then we're going to be
the
cleanest and the most efficient in terms of sort of initial outlay for capital costs. But we're getting to a stage where more of these extreme heat events, the sort of heat dome as it's called, are going to become more the sort of norm. I mean, there's a whole other scary aspect there to it all.
It does look as though it's going to become the normal way.
I know everyone's said this because there's only sort of one story in town. It's only June. like, what is going to happen
I know. That's what Jim Dale was saying to me. So this is just the beginning of the summer. So this is not the end of the heat dome or the heat wave or the thunderstorms.
No, indeed.
It's going to be many more of those as well. But as Jim was saying, that thunderstorm was totally unpredicted. Nobody told us it was coming.
Well,
Nobody
no, this is what... I mean, it actually sort of slightly woke... I mean, I quite like to sleep anyway, but it sort of actually... I realised afterwards it was thunder that had woken me up. But I sort of had come to aware that, like, a loud noise had woken me up. I couldn't really work out what was going on. You're a bit befuddled. And then, obviously, I could sort of hear the rain and more thunder. And I was like, oh, it's you know, looking out the window, I was like, oh, it's an mighty storm. And I was then like, but what? I listened to the weather forecast on the 6 o'clock.
It wasn't even on my app.
News. I don't think I remember anybody mentioning this sort of hellfire
storm.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a proper old-fashioned deluge.
Yeah.
It really was. Right, let's take a break, but we'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Thanks for your company. You're with Petrie. This is Talk, and with me is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. I just wanted to talk to you before we go back into the papers here now, is with Andy Burnham looking very likely actually to be coronated, even though there's some talk of some sort of challenge. I don't know whether they'll get the numbers, but it seems that they are determined it's going to be Andy Burnham. Do we envisage that he is going to be better at grabbing front pages for the right reasons than Starmer was? In comms, would you rather be comms director for Andy Burnham or for...
Without a question. I mean, self-evidently, the big challenge for the government will be, can they actually get their policies sorted out? Because we had so many U-turns and resets and all that. So that's the rather basic.
He's going to have to stick basically to the manifesto.
He is, although this was a manifesto
vague, wasn't it?
Upon which he wasn't even an MP.
I know.
Where, there's all of those awkwardness there. So look, none of the big policy difficulties are going away. Burnham is going to be quite constrained into how far he can sort of reshape them as the guy in charge. But yes, 100%, I'd rather have him because he's actually got a personal kind of sellability about him in the way that, you know, I don't think Storm's a bad man, but he never managed to break away at all from that kind of lawyers, you know, robotic.
Yeah.
And then it actually became worse because his whole big thing was like, I'm going to be the Mr. Rules guy, I'm the steady as she goes. And then he did break all of these rules and turned out to be presiding over a bunch of people as venal and self-serving was frankly the lot that had been, you know, kicked out 2 years ago.
But what would you be telling Andy Burnham now about his first, let's say his first week when he becomes PM as comms director?
Make some quick decisions. Pick the 3 things.
Easy things.
Pick the 3 easy things, and just hammer it from day.
Would you put him in front of all the press? Would you put him in front of Breakfast TV? And
no, I'd probably, in terms of the pure mechanics of that, I'd probably pick the 1 or 2 favoured. So the sort of Sunday Times deep dive interview with then you probably have to go, then the one broadcast, Laura Kuenssberg. So control it in that fashion. I think that's what's quite interesting, because there's been quite a lot of chat at how quick the timetable that Starmer set out on Monday, and how quickly it could be that we do literally have a new Prime Minister in a coronation, most likely by sort of the middle of July. And there's been quite a lot of chat about whether, quite understandably, with Starmer wanting to just sort of, get out there quite quickly. Look, I've resigned. I don't want to be a lame donkey, caretaker. Prime Minister longer than I have to be. But then there was a sort of slightly more conspiracy side where people were saying, oh, well, actually this really sort of is screwing Andy Burnham over, because he was hoping
September
to have until September to kind of get all of his ducks in a row, and the foreshortening really could potentially create quite a scrabble. I mean, certainly in terms of Burnham putting his top team together. Because if you recall, I mean, that was one of the things very early on which absolutely sort of mired Starmer, where there was just this sort of revolve. There was sort of Sue Gray, and then there was Sue Gray arguing all of the kind of the boys, and then there was the sort of Morgan between, all of that. Sort of slightly did for Starmer right from the start.
But that's what Andy's doing in Westminster now, isn't he?
I mean,
there's horse trading going on.
Exactly.
And there are people coming in and saying, give us a job, and he's going,
But he does need to get his sort of back... He needs to get his back room as well, not just the kind of cabinet positions. He needs some decent people to, fill the political advisor roles in number 10.
Yeah.
But my point about, sort of from a pure comms point of view, actually the advantage for Burnham in it being earlier than September is obviously September is the absolute scrums of party conferences, which actually, I mean, party conferences are a huge kind of communications challenge anyway. And if that's your first sort of launching yourself as the new PM, I mean, that's very high stakes. So actually there are some advantages to this earlier foreshortened timetable that means that you can control some of those, in the first couple of weeks, control some of those media narratives, and Burnham putting himself out there in a way that in September will be impossible.
Yeah, and he's going to, like you said, he's going to have to come out with a couple of big things in order to prove why all of this was necessary. Because he this was a coup, and Andy Burnham was right at the front of it. He's got to prove to the country why he did this, why this happened, and what he's going to do about it.
He's been sharking around for months,
such a long time.
It's the sort of least best kept secret. So there's sort of that aspect. Then assume it is going to be this coronation. All the questions around, but mate, no one voted.
Nobody's voted for you.
Nobody, quite literally your own party hasn't kind of voted for you. So no, I mean whichever way he cuts it, it's going to be quite
he's
tough,
going to have to prove himself.
But there is that
quickly.
one thing that he is a more natural communicator than Keir Starmer. He does have a sort of baked-in reputation around Westminster. So I don't just mean within his own party. I mean with the lobby. Of those communication skills and being a pretty decent guy. So he's got that at the moment as a backstop, which Keir Starmer never had.
Never had. I've been saying that as well. He never had, because he came to politics so late, and Burnham's been in since he was 17 or something.
I think the only job he's ever had outside of Westminster was for a sort of trade publication. Yeah. So he's literally
always
grown up.
Politics.
Yeah.
The Guardian, again, talking about the weather, schools, rail and hospitals suffer as the heat engulfs the UK. And then the story, Starmer meets Burnham in a frosty handover chat. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that.
It's so awkward.
So awkward. Because they were actually pals, sort of, as much as Starmer has pals.
Yeah, and I think in a sort of,
in the political
similar
sense.
sort of agey, similar sort of background, that kind of thing. So yes, they apparently had this meeting that was wasn't in Westminster. No one sort of quite knows where it was, and that apparently in it actually Starmer had said to Burnham that he would sort of facilitate conversations with senior civil servants in order to start sort of rolling the... But that's quite normal at the end of kind of any government, at the changeover of any government. All political parties, well, sort of sane ones, all political parties are allowed to go into departments to sort of be briefed about the lie of the land. So this sounds like
this is expected to be a coronation.
Yes.
Then.
So this sounds like very much that sort of briefing operation that Starmer has given the green light to Burnham and his team to do. Obviously, should somebody else come forward as a challenge, they too would need to be afforded that same access. But it looks very much like, within 36 hours of Starmer saying he's off, that the gears are kind of very much grinding in the direction of a Burnham coronation.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, it's not what people are saying; it's what's happening.
Again, just the kind of the drama of it. I sort of want Al Cairns just to come out and do an action man.
I quite like Al Cairns.
I do as well, and I just think it could be, because I think if there were, again, to sort of Colm's point, if there were to be, sort of televised debates or whatever, because Al Cairns is such a different type of a person. Well, he's not a political creature, is he?
No, he's a soldier.
I just think that seeing how Burnham and Cairns what would come out of any kind of exchanges between the two of them would be completely fascinating.
It would be, but I think
it's relatively unlikely.
Yeah, I think they want it just to be done. They've made this decision as a party that they wanted Starmer out and Burnham in. Now they've made their bed.
3 years ago, they did quite literally have the carousel experience, which the Conservative Party kindly provided to everybody.
Quite. So we've seen it before.
How not to
do this. And finally, on the front page of The Guardian, none of your business, says Farage.
This was a fantastic
£5 million
interview. Did you hear it?
Gift. No, I didn't. But I think, of course, it's everybody's business who gives our politicians a huge amount of money.
Wasn't they sort of circles? So with Nick, the one I heard, he's given two, but the one I heard was with Nick Robinson, and they sort of circled other boys. But it wasn't when I was an MP and all of this kind of thing. And then Farage kind of went off on this attack of like, oh well, you Nick, will you be giving up your salary if somebody asked you to? And it was all just very confused. And Farage usually does manage to bluster his way through.
Was he with Nick Ferrari?
With his Today programme was the one I had heard. But he managed to bluster. He sort of, he does usually sort of manage to bluster his way through these things with some kind of veneer of bonhomie.
Yeah.
No.
No.
It was
just
very,
got nasty.
It was just it's none of your business.
It is our business.
It was all quite awkward. As I say, that veneer of the kind of
jolly
blokey, jolly, that was not there.
Well, there you go. Still being investigated, though, I understand. Let's take a quick break, and Amy and I'll be back in a mo.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is the wonderful Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. The Financial Times, I love this story, right at the top, it says, lifting the bar, London poised for record heat. It's in the depth of this. With many schools ill-equipped to deal with extreme temperatures, some parents have pitched in to buy air conditioning units.
Brilliant.
You're not staying at home, I'm going to buy you an aircon unit.
It's a pretty sad state of affairs. If you've literally got to, like...
I'd be there, though, hand in some cash.
Literally.
You don't want the kids home, that's for sure. The metro again, after horrors in furnace-like France, killer heat warnings, fabulous photograph of the Millennium Bridge there, leading to St Paul's Cathedral with a huge lightning bolt striking over. It was a very... It
was some sort of mad number of buildings, as in like in the hundreds, like buildings that were struck by all of these...
I mean, it was
all of these 2,900... 1,000, sorry, lightning strikes.
Extraordinary. The sun, don't worry about a thing, because every little thing is gonna be all right. Gonna be all right.
We're stretching that one a little bit.
Despite the draw,
that out very quickly, though, wouldn't they? Waiting for them.
Oh, they'd have been sat on. They'd have had two headlines, wouldn't they? They'd have been sat on them. Despite draw, England's still on course to go through. So I don't know whether that's true or not, because the Daily Star has said it's the Boston Stranglers, 3 Lions back to the drawing board, as in board.
I sort of caught a bit of the game as I was sat outside waiting. It looked quite exciting, and I'm not even a big... Well, I mean, I sort of watch when England's playing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was sort of...
No, I was asking my producer lots of questions about the game, and he went, "Oh, you're getting into it now, aren't you?" Like, well, sort of. But I mean, it looked to me like Ghana were all over England. I mean, they didn't let them breathe, really.
Well, they've got some quite serious players, although it's not one of the you know. Although they're not sort of, you know, Spain or sort of, you know, one of the big football-known kind of country, they've got some pretty decent players.
They have, yeah, and they proved that point, and they were frustrating England a lot, actually. They were getting really quite cross about it all. But that's the Star, that's the Sun, and the Daily Express. Don't let them get away with Brexit sellouts. The Brexit betrayal has begun as Eurocrats put back reset talks until soft touch Andy Burnham is at number 10. Well, I think Keir Starmer was also a soft touch.
Yes.
With Europe. So
and
that's a pointless...
I mean, it was slightly strange front page from the Express. I mean, obviously it's Express, and yes, it is 10 years on, but they sort of try to wedge quite a bit into that when quite literally there are bigger stories around.
Yeah, they really are.
And then there's a sort of slightly strange, I'm going to say maybe perhaps Photoshop woman who happens to be standing at the White Cliffs of Dover with a Union Jack.
Yeah.
So, it's trying to do too many things, actually, and is not quite landing with the sort of what the real news of the week is.
I thought it was quite interesting to see Nigel Farage demanding a general election, which he definitely didn't want.
Demands, like he has kind of almost default setting is to
but
demand.
You could see that he didn't want it because they've lost 4 out of the last 5 by-elections.
Yeah.
He's confused, actually,
Oh.
and he'd be better off letting Andy Burnham stuff it up, because if there was an election now, I don't think it would go Reform's way.
And also, if you look in kind of any of the local news, the council wins that Reform did get, I mean, they're on a sticky wicket in some of these places, both with regards to, well, they clearly quite literally don't know how to run local government, and then personal councillor sort of behaviour type issues. So it's not all the roaring success that Mr Farage
and also he's not ready. If they did win, where's he going to get MPs from? Where is he going to get? Where are these people? Where's he going to get his cabinet from? I mean,
which has been their perennial problem, that where they have rushed to find people, due diligence hasn't been done. We literally just saw this in the with the the chap Makerfield with some rather unfortunate comments he'd made previously. It's not the first time that in their rush to have a candidate, they just haven't done their due diligence, and it's really trips them up.
They don't have the people. So when he was standing there saying we need a general election, I could almost feel him doing that. No, thank you. No, we don't want one. You're not going to get one anyway. So he was safe to say it. The Telegraph. Burnham, I'll boost cash for defence. The former Mayor of Manchester has met Labour MPs and reassured them that he wants to give the Ministry of Defence more than the 13.5 billion offered. And that could be one of his big statements, right? But where's he going to get the money from? I mean, he'll have to take it.
And also... I mean, there's that just in and of itself. Where are you going to get any more money from? But there's also a point about literally the quantum that he needs. So the reason why everything sort of fell out of bed with the previous Defence Secretary, John Heaney, resigning, and Al Khan's resigning last week, which I think was when everybody pretty much went, oh no, that's almost one of the final nails. Keir's sort of managing to be on this rickety wagon for like the last month, but no, this is all pretty much done now, bar the shouting. The quantum of what the sort of spending, well, the Telegraph refers to it as a spending debacle, which included an increase of just 0.0% of GDP from 2027 to 2030. I mean, to me, what our sort of NATO allies want us to do would need to be in the margin of about 3% of GDP.
I know.
So it's not just finding some more money.
It's finding a heck of a lot.
It's a huge wedge that needs to be found. Just because, I mean, the proposed level at the moment means that we can't even sort of we can't keep up anyway. So in real terms, will be cuts to things like cyber protections and any of the kind of whizzy stuff. So if Burnham can find some more money, and it was being reported again, as I think referenced in the article here, that the now Defence Secretary Dan Jarvis, was already making sounds about, no, we kind of need to look at this again. I mean, as I say, that's all fine, but we're talking about such a vast pot that you are going to need to do something pretty radical to get anywhere close to closing the gap between what the current proposal is and as I say, what our allies, our literal allies who are relying on us as much as we rely on them, are saying, no, come on, stump up.
And pay a lot more.
Stump up and do it.
And of course, there's a NATO meeting coming up, isn't there, where Donald Trump...
Well, this is forcing everybody's hand on it, isn't it?
Yeah, and there is speculation that Donald Trump will, in order to cover for what isn't a very successful exit from Iran...
Just very politely put, Petrie.
Thank you. He will make a huge deal and be furious and angry with NATO allies because he can't get angry with Iran and what's going on there.
But with all of that as the kind of mood music, and then, again, to find anything close to the amount of money that's actually needed to go into defence, you'd have to be looking at big things like, I don't know, cuts to welfare spending. Exactly. And now here we back are round in this circular conversation of, we know they're not going to go, near that. Where else is it going to come from? So, that's an interesting one for Burnham. Yes, prompted by the fact that we've got the NATO summit coming literally in a couple of weeks. That's forcing everybody's hand on that pretty quickly.
I mean, we'll wait and see, but he's going to have to come up with something fairly, like you said, fairly substantial. A nib here. I just wonder how audacious you'd have to be to try and get away with this. But a killer wife lied about her husband's fall on a knife.
Right.
A woman who claimed her husband's fatal stab wound was sustained when he fell on a knife has been found guilty of his murder. I mean, it's very rare that knives land on the floor upwards.
It is,
isn't it? Unless they've got a very weighted sort of like Weebles wobble handle.
It's like the way you're trying to think about how would the practicalities of those work?
And then you'd have to fall on it at precisely the right angle.
These kinds of sort of knife defence are not that uncommon. There was earlier this year there was a very tragic story about how a father had sort of stabbed his teenage daughter. Do you remember this one? And his defence was, we were mucking around in the kitchen and she ran and she ran into the knife, and well, no, he got short shrift for that. But unfortunately, these sort of slightly like, well, for want of a better way of putting it, pull the other one excuses.
Yeah.
It's
like those people that turn up at hospital with things inexplicably.
I know what you're going to say.
In areas of their body.
I have a doctor.
I
have a doctor friend, and some of the stuff he tells me about.
The excuses would be the best.
That he said the really weirdest one he ever... Oh, this is so wrong. The really weirdest one that he ever came across was in that place. Was, you know, the way you can have, like, with newborns, you can get, like, casts of their little hands and feet done?
Yeah.
And so there was, like, a little bronze cast of a baby's foot up there, of one guy.
And what was his excuse? Fell on it.
It's something completely... Like, I was tidying...
It's amazing how you're just walking around.
The attic, this kind of thing.
Just walking around.
He said that was the worst, the weirdest and worst one that sort of he and his team had seen for a while.
Yeah, I've got another story for you, but I haven't got time to tell it. It involved an eel and Chinese medicine, and... yeah. Anyway, why do we always end up here, don't we? Thank you so much.
Great
Amy
pleasure.
Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Tory Party, and that's through all papers for Wednesday. Coming up, it's just you and me, and we're going to America. We're going to chat about the football and the reflecting pool, which I am obsessed about in Washington, D.C. So we'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour, and slightly different, of course, again, because we've got the football, so there'll be a couple of interviews in here, but the rest of the time is dedicated to you. And I do want to ask you about Brexit. So 10 years on from the vote, and I want to know if it was held today, which way would you vote? Would you have changed your vote? Would you stick with it? Would you stay with Remain, stay with Leave? And what did you imagine Brexit would look like? And does it look like how you thought it would look? Because I don't think it's done anybody. It hasn't done anything for Remainers, and it hasn't done anything for Leavers. I think it's just a mess, isn't it? It's just not. Nothing seems to be better anyway. I don't know what you could say. What is better since Brexit? Tell me what is better. What has changed fundamentally that you're pleased about? Excuse me. So that's what I'd like to discuss with you this morning. And do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Those calls are charged at the national rate, but we call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. Why did you vote the way you voted? Would you vote that way again if it were to be held now? The Times was doing a poll on that very question. What would you vote if it was happening today, and 88% of return votes said they would vote Remain. So I'm just interested to test that really across the country and see if that's just Times readers. Could be, couldn't it? But how you would feel about a vote now if it were to be carried out. We're also going to be heading to America in just a moment. We're also heading to America a little bit later on in the programme as well, because there are a few US stories that I'm completely obsessed with, and one of them is the reflecting pool at Washington DC. If you haven't heard about this story, I don't know where you've been. I am literally obsessed day by day watching this story unfold. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on with Ryan Harris. So lots to come in this hour, and I hope you as well. There's loads of messages coming through, so please do send me messages as well about your Brexit vote. 10 years on, is this what you thought it would look like? And if not, what did you think it was going to look like? And do you feel that I think everybody's been let down by this. I think the whole country has. Give me a call and let's have a chat about that. First, though, that Ghana-England football match, 0-0. Everybody's very disappointed, I think, by that. And joining me now to discuss this and other stories surrounding the World Cup is Steve Forbes, sports journalist in North America. Steve, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Petrie. How's it going?
Good, thank you. Yeah, are you happy with Scotland so far?
Yeah, I would have been happier with a point against Morocco. I felt like conceding after 70 seconds really wasn't part of the game plan for Steve Clarke's side, and grew into the game. I felt really were the better side for the majority of it, but just couldn't find the goal that they needed to ensure passage to the last 32. So I've now got to keep all my fingers and my toes crossed for the match against Brazil tomorrow.
Brazil, yeah. Actually, it's tonight, Wednesday night, isn't it? So for us, it's today. So Wednesday night, quite a late start here, I think. It's 11 o'clock for the game here. Scotland, Brazil. But the Scottish fans, just before we get on to the English one, they have gone down an absolute storm. We were saying this last week as well, but since then, even more love for the Scottish fans, even more love for the Scottish duck that they've got as well, that marches with the pipes and drums. But Scotland have caught the heart, certainly, of Boston. Not so much in Miami.
Well, I haven't heard any horror stories from Miami yet. I saw that they attended the Marlins game after going to the Red Sox in Boston. Obviously, as you say, the people of Boston really took to the Scots, and then they packed out the stadium for the baseball game in Miami too. I think they've conducted themselves really well throughout the tournament. I think they're showing, as we said last week, just how to behave as fans following your country. It's about having fun, but it's about doing it in a non-disruptive way, should we say, and not causing any trouble. So I really do think that they've held themselves in high regard on their tour of the USA. And long may it continue.
There was some talk, I don't know whether it was tongue-in-cheek, about Boston and Glasgow twinning after their love affair began in Boston. I mean, that would be a fantastic thing, wouldn't it?
No, that'd be great. That'd be great. I know we've seen social media clips of the people in Boston absolutely loving the Scots being there. There was one guy who actually is now planning a trip to go to Scotland next year. He seemed very emotional, almost crying at the fact that the Scots have been so well received in Boston. But they do move on to Miami. They need that result against Brazil. A point would be great. And then we'll see how much they can progress in this competition.
Well, I think after the England game that's just been witnessed, there'll be a lot of English people watching the Scottish game with interest, actually, against Brazil. But the other fans that I've fallen a bit in love with are the Norwegians.
Okay.
Because they do that rowing thing. The whole you get thousands of them sat down rowing to the beat of a drum. I've fallen a bit in love with them. I think they're brilliant.
It was great to see that in Times Square. Very reminiscent of when Iceland did their kind of overhead clapping at Euro 2016. But yeah, it was great. It was great to see that too. Again, support the nation how you want to see countries support.
Yeah, it really has been. We haven't seen much about the England supporters, though. Is that because they're not doing anything joined up or doing anything... Any set pieces, perhaps, like Scotland have got the pipes and drums and stuff?
Maybe that's something to be said. I don't know. Maybe other nations just have more things that are synonymous with them.
Yeah.
So they notice more. Obviously, there's a big shoe, shall we say, to fill in Boston. The fact that England fans were there for the game against Ghana. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, that they were well behaved and they conducted themselves well within the city. But maybe, certain countries just have things that are just more closely linked to them historically or culturally than maybe England would have.
Yeah, and I think the other highlight for me was hearing all those Scots singing the Flower of Scotland, is it? Have I got
Flower of Scotland, yeah, the national anthem.
That was beautiful. It really was. I was tearing up. People were tearing up. Yeah. I thought it was spectacular.
Yeah, very, very emotional stuff if you're a Scot. And yeah, it's amazing to see that the decibel levels went off the charts when they were singing it in Boston.
And they held the tune as well. It wasn't all shouting. Well, look, let's have a talk about this England-Ghana game. I was able to watch the first hour of it before we came into the studio, and the England team seemed to be getting really cross and frustrated. Jude Bellingham was seeming to get really frustrated with the amount of attention he was getting from the defensive play of Ghana. No, Steve is frozen. Or I've just asked the dumbest question in football, and he's fainted. We'll try and get him. We'll try and get him back. That was just the wrong time for my confidence levels. I can assure you of that. I feel a bit stupid now, but we will try and get Steve back. But which of the because I've been more impressed, I think, by the fans than the football. I'm not really into football. I know a bit about it because I've got a son who loves football, so he tells me even if I don't want to know. He'll go on and on and on about Man United. So I have learnt a little bit about football, and I used to go out with a Liverpool fan, so I used to watch a bit of football there as well. So it would, it's in there somewhere. So I don't know a lot about it, but the fans, I think, have really made this tournament. I don't know if that's always been the case, but I think the Norwegians have impressed me, and definitely the Scots. I mean, they've been absolutely fantastic, and there's some records being broken as well that I want to speak to Steve about. We'll get back to Steve as soon as we can get him. We're still struggling to get him. Oh, blimey. Great. This is just my luck, isn't it? But also then talk to me about Brexit and whether you think that it's been what you hoped it would be. What did you hope it would be? What did you think it was going to be? Zarina says, I voted to leave I was so disillusioned with weak British politicians who appeared to be solely reliant on Europe for guidance. I felt British politicians were coasting and needed a jolt to expose their ineptness and hopefully respond with gusto by the sheer amount of people who were unhappy with the lack of leadership. I did feel that Brexit was an actual bloody nose to politicians who were coasting. I agree with that. I think that a lot of people were very angry and upset after the financial crash in this country, and they wanted some attention. They wanted something to change, something to happen. So I recognise this completely. So she goes on to say, instead, the politicians either removed themselves from politics, ran around like headless chickens, fought amongst themselves and had nothing to offer the country. Sadly, 10 years on, they're still running around like headless chickens with no answers and no ideas. To say that I'm disappointed is an understatement, and yet these people are still rewarding themselves with titles and wealth. They and the establishment sicken me. I'm angry. Yep. I kind of echo that as well, Zarina. Thank you for that message. Right, we've got Steve back, I think. Steve Forbes is back with us. I was just saying, maybe that was the stupidest question you've ever heard and you just froze or fainted. But I was saying that England seemed to be a bit frustrated.
Well, I'm so sorry. I was sat and my phone got too hot and decided to switch itself off. So I've just moved to a shadier part of the building. So hopefully we don't have any hiccups this time. Yeah, in terms of England's performance, not so sunny in Boston for them. A bit wet against Ghana and kind of a bit wet really in front of goal too. 0-0 it finished, and couldn't really show their attacking prowess as they did against Croatia. They made a couple of changes. John Stones went out the team for Mark Gay. Jed Spence replaced Nico O'Reilly, because we talked about how maybe that partnership at the back wasn't so great against Croatia, but they had too much going forward. Well, it was kind of the opposite. They were very resolute defensively, but couldn't break Ghana down. Harry Kane with the best opportunity in the 86th minute when he blazed it over the bar from 7 yards. So I think if you're a Ghanaian fan, you'd be very happy with that result. Very resolute, keeping England at bay. Obviously, the teams have 4 points. Every likelihood is they'll reach the last 32 as well. It'll just be a case of who's gonna top the group. But England have arguably the weakest opponent, albeit they showed a lot of fight against Ghana in that first game, in Panama, in their final group game in New York. So you would expect England to win there and then top the group.
Yeah, well, you would hope, wouldn't you? But Ghana clearly went in with a plan, didn't they? They wanted. I think they were happy with the 0-0.
Yeah, I think they were there to stifle England. Their manager Carlos Queiroz said after the game that they had England mentally at half-time, and it was a very physical game. Some robust 50-50 challenges going in, and I think maybe that was just energy sapping really for England's forwards. So Ghana, stuck to that game plan, got the point that they ideally would have wanted, and then they both moved on. Equal on 4 points to the final group game. Both were in with a chance of finishing top.
Well, we'll wait and see. We haven't got too long to wait now. I don't know if Steve is frozen again. Are you frozen again? Blink if you can hear me. No, he's gone. Oh, he's back. He's back. Hello. Right, I wanted to move on to some of the records that are being set. Just keep blinking, so I know you're still there. Lionel Messi. Now he's quite an old boy in terms of football, isn't he? He's nearly 40 years old, but he's pulling it out the bag, isn't he? His 39th birthday. He's still scoring goals, and it's World Cup's all-time leading scorer.
Yeah, very much so. A lot to be said, by the way, about Canadian cell phone service over here. So I do apologise about that. But yeah, Messi, a couple of days before his 39th birthday, registered him as the World Cup's all-time leading scorer with 18, with the couple he got against Austria. Obviously scored the hat-trick in the first game against Algeria, showing that he's still, even in the very twilight of his career, I imagine, that he is the best player on the planet on his day. So
but
yeah,
he retired, didn't he? He retired from international football 10 years ago, and then saying that it was done, it wasn't something he was going to do again, and now he's back and winning you know, getting goals and winning titles.
Yeah, Argentina didn't have the best of spells back in 2015, 2016, said that he maybe couldn't do it for their national team any longer, reversed on that decision. And what a decision it was, because in that last decade, not only has he had an exceptional career at club level, but he's won the World Cup as well. And so as reigning holders, he's now got 5 goals in this tournament, top scorer, and Argentina in with a great shout of retaining that trophy, especially with Messi on hot form as he is.
Do you think he'll be back in 4 years' time? Be quite really old then.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we see Cristiano Ronaldo taking pelters at 41 years of age because he maybe can't do it for Portugal at the same level anymore. He's still starting games, although he did get a brace against Uzbekistan. Not the most formidable of opponents, but he's still scoring. He's all the way down in with 10 World Cup goals, so he's nowhere near the likes of Messi. And I think Kylian Mbappe is probably the one to watch. He's on 16 as well. He's only
a lot
27.
younger. Yeah.
He's 27, so he's still got probably another 8 to 10 years at that level of featuring in another few World Cups at least. So Messi will probably be trying to score as many as he can now, because this is probably his final attempt. And if he wants to hold on to that record,
for more than a couple of years,
Mbappe's hot on his tails. Yeah.
There was a moment, wasn't there, today, a little controversy, or at least it appeared to be controversial, where Shakira appeared to be being kissed by an unwanted admirer.
Oh, yeah, she had that song Hips Don't Lie, but it seems like the lips don't lie with this one. I believe from the story that I read, it was one of her sons. Yeah. So a son giving her a kiss on the cheek in front of the cameras. And maybe the reason she had such a scowl is he, I don't know, pulled on her hair or something accidentally when he kind of put his arm around her.
Well, sons can be annoying. I've got one. They can be annoying. But yeah, it looked like this. He was wearing a baseball cap, and people were concerned that she looked like she was upset about it. But I think he pulled on her hair, and of course she was annoyed because it was her son, a 13-year-old son, who was giving her a kiss.
Yeah, well, a little bit of a nothing story from the tabloids in that one, but it's been quite nice. She's got the official song of the tournament, so she's been at a few games. We hear that before every match as well. I've been to a few here in Vancouver at BC Place, here at every game, and it's just one of them things. I think is a lot has been made.
Yeah, I think they're just desperate for a bit of gossip, aren't they, from the World Cup? I think Steve's gone. Anyway, Steve Forbes, thank you. If you can hear me all the way in Vancouver, sports journalist in North America. Maybe he's suffering with like you said, the heat. It's just too much, isn't it? It's too much for us here, and will affect your mobile phones. Right, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you. And the question I'm putting to you this morning, because it's 10 years and one day since the Brexit vote, is really a case of what did you imagine that it was going to be like? What did you think Brexit was going to be? And if the vote was to happen today, how would you vote now? Would your vote have changed? Would it remain the same? Would you leave if you left, if you wanted to leave, because I think that it's all been a bit pants, hasn't it? To be perfectly honest, I don't think anybody's satisfied with what we've ended up with. Certainly leavers aren't satisfied. Remainers, sorry, aren't satisfied. And I don't think leavers are happy either, because what did you expect? What did you want from leave? And did you get it? Do you think you're ever going to get it? So in that case, would you go back in? I mean, it looks likely that we're going to have to at some point for the sake of the economy. But let me know. 0344 499 1000. Andrew has called from Fife, a first-time caller from Fife. Hello, Andrew.
Yes. Yes, I wouldn't go back into Brexit. We voted out. It should have all been dealt with. If we have another vote on breakfast, that means that we should have another vote on independence for Scotland. That's what I think. If that's the rules. If that's the rules the government are going to play by.
So, what you would want another ref for Scotland for independence?
Well, if we're going to have another vote on Brexit, yes.
Well, I don't think we are going to have another vote on Brexit.
But I know, but it's getting pushed through. Let's be honest. It's no like Brexit anything's happened. They're just lying to us.
But Brexit wasn't good for Scotland, was it?
Well, I would say the SNP wasn't good for Scotland.
So, are you looking for independence? Do you want independence from the rest?
I'm actually a member of the Union Bears.
I don't know what that is.
Club. It's a Rangers Football Club supporters club.
Oh right, okay. Are you watching the World Cup?
Because the reason that independence wasn't voted for Scotland was because of us, the Rangers Football Club, serving the monarchy. Now we're all talking amongst Rangers fans about the King being the keeper of the faith and how we should maybe say something and plan something at the football match to say no more. We're losing faith in the monarchy, and that's Glasgow Rangers saying that. Can you imagine that?
No. So, if there were to be another Brexit vote, and I don't think there will be.
No, I don't think there will be one either as well, like that.
But would you vote the same, differently?
No, I'd vote leave again.
You'd vote leave again?
Until the government got it right. We've already had the vote. They said we were going to have another vote on it. We got told we'd have one and only vote. That's what they said. One vote.
Yeah, once in a lifetime. It was for the Scottish independence, yeah.
Yes, and that was the Conservatives.
Yeah.
Who were the fucking biggest... sorry for swearing. But the biggest idiot's gone. We had David Cameron, who left his son in a pub. Know what I mean?
Well, I mean, he had no reason to call for a Brexit vote anyway. I don't know why. Nobody even knows why he did it. Nobody was even talking about Europe. No one was even worried about Europe. Nobody even thought about it.
I think it was because I think it was all part of mass immigration. I think it was all a big plan by EU. Look at Germany now. Look at this. For me, what I would like to see is Britain turn into Poland. That's what I'm looking for. That's why I've actually cancelled my SNP membership, and I've got 4,000 of my friends to cancel their SNP membership, and we've all went to the Restore Party. So that's 4,000 people I've got to manage to vote the Restore Party to join.
So you'd want to be more like Poland?
Yes.
Well, Poland joined the EU.
Yes, I know, but they have strict laws on strict borders, immigration, they have a better economy.
Yeah, because they joined the EU.
Yes, I understand that.
So why would you vote leave?
We could do that as well.
Yeah, we could.
But only if they give us the right mandate and they don't lie to us. We're sick of politicians lying. If they set out the mandate and stuck to what it was, then I'm sure I would vote to go back into the EU.
Yeah, because we had all the rights and we weren't part of the Schengen Agreement. I mean, Poland's economy is now 86% of Britain's. It's not quite 100%, but that is since it joined the EU. Their economy has grown and grown and grown. They are building the infrastructure.
Look at the net migration.
Yeah, but they because they've organised that with.
Look at their crime levels. Check out their crime levels.
Yeah.
Check out their violent crime levels. Well down on us. The whole of Poland, there's more crime in central London than there is in the whole of Poland as a country.
Well, I'm not sure that's true because I'm not sure that's true.
Because I liked it. You can check the figures yourself. I checked them myself. I googled them.
Right. But I mean, Google's not entirely always accurate. You've got to be careful with that. But I mean, I would check it out. But look,
if Google's not accurate, who's going
to tell me the truth?
Who's going to tell me the truth? If Google's not going to tell me the truth, who's going to tell me the truth then?
Poland. Do you remember all the Polish that came over here and took our jobs and all of that?
I worked with many of them. They were good friends of mine.
Yeah, and they've all gone back now to a wealthier country and a better built country, and they've all gone back. That's what happens.
But let's be honest, the reason we got them over here for cheap labour, I was doing the same job as them, and I was making £10 an hour more than them.
Yeah. Well, now you can't get a Polish builder for love nor money because they've all gone back.
I know, and they were all good guys, but
they were, hard-working, lovely people.
They come to the country to work and not wanted to work.
But do you remember though the absolute hellstorm that was leashed with all these Polish people were coming over, and it was everybody was so angry with them and hated them because they were stealing our jobs and stealing our houses and doing all this thing.
I met them and we realised that they were.
Yeah, and then we realised they were hard-working, good people.
How do we become friends with? How do we become friends with a Muslim who's a total fascist, an Islamic fundamentalist? How do we become friends with an Islamic fundamentalist? You can't.
Who's an Islamic fundamentalist?
Well, we're talking about all these crimes that are going on in Britain. They're all Islamic fundamentalists, aren't they? All these rape gangs and that, everything that's going on. We're just getting gaslighted all the time. All you have to do is look on social media. Everything on social media. X, Netflix, TikTok. I've been shadow banned off TikTok.
Have you?
I had to check on my computer to see I've been shadow banned for comments.
Oh dear. Even on.
I haven't wrote any hate speech. I'm against any violence. I want no violence. I want a peaceful outcome to this. But what I'm looking forward to is I love the fact that what Reform done in the by-election, putting up that plumber against Andy Burham, knowing that Andy Burham would win. Now it's left that Labour have just shot themselves in the foot. We all know that the next mayor, Manchester's got to be a Reform mayor. That's guaranteed.
I think there's a good chance, but I mean you've got to remember that.
I think there's a great chance. I think it's better than a big chance. I think Labour are sweating, and they're all willing.
Well, they're definitely threatened and they're worried.
They don't realise they're causing decades and decades of damage to this party and they don't care.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we won't have to wait very long at all. These elections, though, are really expensive. Goodness me. Andrew, thanks for your call. Great. I'm going to take a break. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And as I was saying earlier on in the programme, I am utterly obsessed about one particular story in the United States of America. And for a change, it isn't Trump, although it is thanks to Trump that this story exists at all. And that is the reflecting pool in Washington, D.C. And it has been the most colossal disaster and continues to be so. In fact, my understanding is that Trump has said that it needs to be drained again. Well, to explain more on this story, I'm delighted to say that we have Ryan Harris with us, US journalist and broadcaster. I cannot stop watching about this reflecting pool, Ryan. It seems to be just too perfect to be true, as a symbol of the Trump presidency. Tell us more about it. Tell us how this all started and what's happened.
Well, and I agree with you. There are so many more and bigger and more important things to be focused on. And the President of the United States, as you have mentioned, is spending a lot of time focused on the problems with the reflecting pool. And those problems go back decades, Petrie. The reflecting pool has always been a sort of a source for algae and other growth, and the trash ends up in there, whether it's tossed in intentionally or it blows in, and the water is not just stagnant. There is a system that recirculates and filters the water and is supposed to help keep it clean. But in this process, this $14 million spent to clean up the reflecting pool, not one dime and not 1 second of attention went to this now very old and antiquated recirculation system, where if they'd even just gone in maybe and bleached it out or cleaned it out or done something, that might have made a difference. And really, honestly, it probably does need an upgrade. But this is just one, Petrie, as you've probably seen, of a multitude of layers to this story that just keep piling on. So, it started with the pool being disgusting and green and full of algae. And of course, Donald Trump, as he's prone to do, loves to blame the last two Democratic presidents for causing that to happen, and not dirty water and the heat and humidity of a Washington, D.C. summer. And so he promised to drain the pool symbolically, like he promised to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C., and have it redone and painted in American flag blue. So then the job goes out without a bid to Mr. Trump's pool contractor.
And he used emergency powers, didn't he? Because everything in government has to go to a bidding contest, but he used some emergency power, oddly, and gave the job to his mate.
Exactly. And there are occasions where a government job, doesn't necessarily have to go through the competitive bidding process. But this one, would have been nice, because what we saw there was this $14 million price tag included a 20% profit margin, where government jobs standard range is 6 to 12% profit. So there's that piece of it. Then this guy puts down this material, and this particular blue material takes time to cure before you can put water in the pool. And as I understand it, the material does not cure well or quickly in a humid environment, as the aforementioned DC summers are. And so they didn't allow it to cure properly. Then they filled it with water. And in the process of refilling it, the old pipes didn't filter out the water properly, and the algae began to grow again. So the next step in this solution, the next layer up there, is dumping in 12% hydrogen peroxide. Now, that's not something you go to pick up at the pharmacy when you want to clean out a cut or something. I believe that's 1%. This is a mix that is not only apparently supposed to kill off algae, but will also thin paint. And so we've seen these pieces come up, these chunks of blue paint, and I guess people have been, touching it, and somebody might have taken a piece of it out. Mr. Trump now claims that somebody cut a 300-foot swatch of this paint out with no evidence whatsoever. But now there are cameras, security cameras posted all around the reflecting pool,
and
as well as
National Guard.
And additional police, including National Guard, to patrol the area to prevent vandals. Sorry, I hate air quotes, but I had to do it to prevent vandals from damaging the pool resurfacing even further.
I mean, what's extraordinary to me is that there's footage of Donald Trump talking about this pool lining that was being put in, a swimming pool lining, saying that you wouldn't be able to cut it with even the sharpest knife. It's impossible to cut. So there's one thing. He also said this would last 50 years, and 3 days I think it took for the reflecting pool to be filled with algae again. And when you see images of where the hydrogen peroxide went in, it's a blue strip around the outside, because, as you said, the system that moved the water around wasn't moving this bleach that was put in there. Now ducks don't even swim on it because it's filled with toxic bleach. So they're having to drain it again. But there have been arrests.
Yes, apparently one person, at least, who has tried to take a piece of this. I mean, I don't know what the point would be of leaving the raised piece of this stuff in there. I mean, the damage is done. The thing needs to be completely redone again if they're going to do it. But apparently one person cut a piece out and tried to take it with them. Probably somebody with a following on TikTok or Instagram, most likely. But Donald Trump has promised that anyone else messing around with the reflecting pool will face 10 years in federal prison, because apparently there's a law that says anybody doing damage to something like that in D.C. faces a 10-year prison sentence.
Does that mean that he and his cohort could go to prison for 10 years? Because it looks like that they actually created the damage. The other layer to this is that a lot of scientists are saying that the colour of the paint has also sped up the growth of the algae, because the blue, the darker blue, has warmed the water more quickly than the granite colour did beforehand. So it's actually the fault of the paint choice, the colour of the paint as well.
Yes, absolutely, and that's true of anything that's coated in a darker color. And including your pool. A lot of people use lighter colors here in the United States in their swimming pools, but some choose to use that darker blue pool surfacing because it helps save on the pool heating bills. The sun hits it, it reflects the heat back better because the darkness, absorbs the heat, and that's the result. And yes, when you warm the water, you're cooking the algae. You're giving it it's the perfect recipe for algae and mosquitoes, just in time for 500,000 people or more to pack them all right up the way for the 4th of July party.
I mean, what will be interesting to see, because they can't cover this, right? I know that the Kennedy Center is still covered, where Trump's name was taken down. He's apparently put up a blanket or something to cover the fact that his name's been taken down. But he can't cover this. This is a huge piece of land, right? And so we're going to see the state of the pool when they drain the water. He's not going to be happy with that.
Absolutely. And to your point, I was watching because they had a live stream of the Kennedy Center with all of that as the scaffolding was going up. And poor people, it was just before 2 a.m. Eastern time. The last piece of the scaffolding construction was that white tarp that went over, and the people who waited out there for hours about went berserk. But no, this is a massive area. Petrie, you've been to Washington, D.C. You know, it's like at least 400 feet long. It's not even like an Olympic-sized swimming pool. It's
huge.
Massive, and it's meant for depending on which side you're on, give you a reflection of either the Washington Monument or the Lincoln Memorial, because it sits directly in between the two. So it's not something that they could just throw a tarp over and be okay.
It'll be fascinating to see. But it's extraordinary, isn't it, the sort of the gymnastics that are being done by the Republicans to not just say, we messed up. You know, we tried to do it cheaply, it didn't work. There's no acceptance of responsibility here at all. In fact, they're going to take it all the way to the court. I can't wait till they take it to court, actually, when all the scientists step in and explain exactly how this happened scientifically. But so those people have got nothing to worry about as far as court is concerned, I don't think. But it's just there's no accountability, is there?
No, and to your point, they didn't do it cheaply, Petrie. It cost $14 million.
Yeah, that's true.
It was the contractor who did it on the cheap after being paid a colossal sum of money for a job. And this is another one of those, like the ballroom that were at the White House there, that was supposed to be, you know, $1 million or $2 million to do. And then all of a sudden the price tag comes up and it's $14 million. And no accountability whatsoever. And, you know, that seems to be common, not among all Republicans, because we're seeing more and more Republicans here start to actually speak up if they're not necessarily MAGA or Donald Trump Republicans. But MAGA Republicans definitely have a way of being presented with the facts and then spinning it in a way that would make a psychologist's head swirl.
I mean, it's quite fascinating to watch, to be honest with you. Well, I just saw popping up on one of my screens in here a little while ago that the Senate has voted, I don't know if you've seen it, the Senate has voted to limit Donald Trump's war powers in Iran. Have you seen that?
You know, that's brand new. I have not. I was prepping for our segment here, but that's surprising because the House passed it and the Senate couldn't get enough Republicans on board. So if the two, now this is not a law, it's a resolution, or would be if they're following the standard procedure here. And so what would happen then is the resolution would go to the president's desk. He can sign it. He doesn't have to sign it.
That's the
point. I guarantee you he's not going to sign it.
What is the point of some American politics? I just don't get it. Talking of which, the Republicans are really against Britain at the moment. It feels, the GOP. It feels that they really hate the British at the moment. They didn't like Starmer. And there are some rumours that they're going to start now to come after Andy Burnham, not in the same way, but they are going to do that. Why do they dislike the UK so much?
I don't understand why they don't like Britain, because you personally have heard me say a million times how much I love Britain. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about how I can't do it for a while, but I'm itching to get back to London. I mean, it's just there's so many things wrong with that. But I think as long as it's not Reform UK and Nigel Farage in power, the MAGA, at least Republicans, or the more conservative Republicans, are not going to be too keen on Great Britain. And I'm sure they can't, I mean, it's none of their business, really. It's the British people's business. But I'm sure they can't fathom the massive majority that Labour has in Parliament either. It just probably makes no sense to them. But they can't get hold of it.
Well, they hate the socialist. They hate the socialist idea, don't they? They're dismantling everything that is potentially socialist in America at the moment.
They're certainly trying. I mean, you know, they've unraveled for the most part food and healthcare benefits for people. So, you know, they would definitely never do something like the National Health Service over here. You'd never, in a million years, see Republicans even consider voting for something like the National Health Service or any other sort of social program, and it's, you mentioned Mr. Burnham. I really am interested to see if he's going to do like Mr. Starmer and like so many other European leaders, the way they sort of, when they're with Donald Trump, they sort of coddle him and sort of stroke his ego.
I hope
well,
not.
But
Ryan.
it's, but they do it because that's how they can sort of reel him in a little bit, and then when they're all off on their own, they're laughing and saying,
yeah, but it doesn't really make any difference, does it? He hasn't done us any great favours. We've got the same tariffs as the Taliban, for goodness sake. I mean, he hasn't really helped us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ryan, it's always such a joy to talk to you. I hope to do it again very soon. Thank you very much indeed. Ryan Harris there, a US journalist and broadcaster. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next 10 minutes. And we've been talking about Brexit 10 years on. And I've been asking you, if the vote were to happen today, which way would you go? Would you stick with leave? Would you stick with remain? Or would you swap that? And also, what does Brexit look like? Or what did you think you were voting for? I think that's what I mean. What did you think Brexit was going to be like, and has it met those expectations? I think that it's failed everybody in this country, to be honest with you, both Remainers and Leavers. I think that nobody's happy with what's happened. Zarina has messaged back and said, honestly, Petrie, I don't think we have much of a choice. We clearly cannot govern ourselves properly. It pains me to admit that we need to surrender to the rules of the EU before we bankrupt ourselves. Migration was and is unaffordable. We're paying through the nose to support people from overseas who have homes back in their own countries and take their earnings back with them. Gary says, on Brexit, like most of Scotland, I voted to remain, and after seeing all the debates at the time, for and against, I think we were all sold a lie. Well, it was the referendum was labelled a failed referendum, and because it was advisory, it stuck. Had it been non-advisory, had it been a fixed point, it would have been cancelled because of all the lies. I mean, that has been proven in a court, but because it was an advisory referendum, it stood. So that's just one of those weird little things. But yeah, it was ruled that it was a lie. Everything seems 10 times more expensive than before, and migration has massively increased. Yet again, politicians have failed us all. No wonder we don't trust a word they say. That's from Gary in Glasgow. Absolutely right. Joss is in Leeds. Morning, Joss.
Hi, love. You all right?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm a big fan of your dish, you know, the Petrie dish.
Oh, thank you. That was one of my nicknames.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, at school.
I hope it's not by your ex-boyfriend.
No, don't be rude.
Oh, right.
No. Joss, what do you think about Brexit 10 years on?
Well, it's more to my neighbour. He ended up ending his life of a Brexit because it got to about 5 years, and then he ended up... he got sick of it because nothing was happening with it. Like, we'd all voted for it, and that's what happened, and then nothing happened.
It took us a long time to actually leave, didn't it, to get out because of all the complicated...
Yeah, it took too long, to be honest, yeah.
The red tape and all of that we had to untie.
Yeah, it'd have been 75 yesterday as well.
Sorry, say again?
It'd have been 75 yesterday as well, so it'd be 76 in one day now.
Right. But but nothing's... I mean, what's changed?
What's changed? Nothing at all.
It's got worse, right?
Oh, yeah, it's got 10 times worse. Like, this is worst thing since Thatcher.
So if there was a referendum today, would you... Which way would you vote?
The far right.
No, a referendum on Brexit.
Oh, the referendum on Brexit, I'd leave, but with different people in charge.
But what do you think different people would have got for us?
You know what? Any normal person, if they're in charge, they'd do something different. But all the politicians, they're all the same. They're all full of rubbish. Been polite.
Yeah. But what
So,
I'm just struggling to think what different things could have been got because
immigration.
Immigration, but that we had more control over that when we were in the EU.
Did we?
Yeah, loads more. Yeah, we weren't part of the Schengen Agreement, and we could send people back to France, which we did.
Well, they won't send them back to France, would they?
But they did. We did.
Well, I think the French owe us a lot anyway from past times, and all they do is escort them to our waters now. So I think that maybe it's forgetting the past.
Well, the French have cut the number of boats quite substantially after about £1 billion. After about £1 billion, but they have started to cut the boats coming across.
Well, they haven't bought enough knives, have they? Because they're still crossing, aren't they?
Well, so, in fewer numbers, yeah, but we didn't see these numbers before Brexit.
I'd rather see minus numbers coming over than positive.
But what do you think that reform would be able to do with that?
I'm not saying reform. I think there needs to be a bit more of a far right, because not far right, but we just don't want them over here. Because why are they over here? Because they aren't doing anything for us apart from strolling streets. And they've got the brand new iPhones, and I'm on my iPhone -8, and I work for a living.
Mm.
So I just think it's ridiculous.
But but you would still vote to leave.
If we leave the EU, why is there still people coming from Europe? Like, I know it's to do with politics and all the currency and whatnot, but I just think, how have we ended up?
Well, the French before Brexit had a reason that because we were all part of the same bloc, so they had a reason to stop the boats, if you like, because we could just send them back. So they didn't but we had all those camps and things like that there. But we did send them back, and what has happened is that because we needed European workers in this country to fill a lot of the jobs, when the Europeans
coming up, whatever.
Yeah, but because we banned the Europeans from coming here, basically, we said we're not part.
So are we part of like North Africa now, then, and elsewhere?
No, but where are we going to get immigrant workers from if we don't get them from Europe?
Not illegal ones for a start.
No, but we still have an enormous amount of immigrant workers that come in from all over the world.
Yet whoever offered me a dinghy to France to go see Normandy for a city break or whatnot. I've never seen that.
But no, because you can get on a ferry. Because you've got.
Why can't they got on a ferry when they've got their passports and stuff to come here?
Because they don't have visas to come here, because they're...
Well, don't come there then. That's what my argument is. Don't come. If you haven't got a visa, I can't fly to America.
No, but you don't need to. You're not going there to save your life.
Oh, saving the life. What they say? They ain't got a noose round the neck, have they?
No, but they're leaving countries where there's war.
Know that I ain't got something going off at home, and I'm leaving to America to save my own life.
Because that wouldn't be acceptable in terms of a refugee reason.
I didn't realise you lived at my house and seen what I go through.
Well, are you a refugee in Leeds?
I'm a refugee in my own house, yeah. I'm now sat in garden because I ain't allowed in. Because there's air conditioning on.
Right. But I don't think that would be on an asylum application.
It's not. Where did the sign?
So you're saying that no air conditioning is the same as somebody who is threatened with death in their home country? That's the same to you?
How can so many thousand men be so threatened by death? There must only be women there. The population.
Have you seen what's happening in Iran at the moment? Do you know what's happening in Lebanon at the moment?
Yeah,
they're being bombed, right?
Yeah, I've seen that they've been bombed, but there's no men getting killed, is there? Because they're all in England.
No, they are getting killed, thousands of them, and also in Iran. So this is what happens, you see. We get involved in wars overseas, and then people don't want to live there anymore, and they're scared to live there, and then they leave and they come here.
Why would I want them to come live here?
It's got nothing to do with you.
Well, it's got nothing to do with you either.
I'm not saying they can't come here.
Well, I am, because I think
that's not the law. That's not the international law. I mean, let's hope. Joss, I really hope that one day you don't need the kind of help that other people